Joshua a co-host invite. I don't know if it's working, but I did send it to you, I promise. And if it doesn't work, what I will do is we'll just bring you up a speaker, but you'll still be obviously a co-host in the space, and I'll say so. So we will start in like 2 minutes. Obviously, shout out to our boy Solar, who just recorded 2 hours. It was extensive, really great interview. So he's a saint now. So Joshua, and obviously Matt, you're coming on whenever you tell me. Like we're going. So but it's cool, and I was really happy with the episode. And thank you so much, Solar. Really awesome. Like honestly, made me feel really good about online Dharma and just everything. Just like it clarified a lot, and I think it's I love this. I love doing this. For as long as we keep it going, or as long as I have the energy to do it, we'll keep it going for a while. So, yeah, thank you guys. Obviously, it doesn't happen without. So,
Nice. No, I'm excited to hear it.
Nat, please go. Fuck, we got Patrick. Now I'm nervous. Now I'll say something. No, I'm kidding. I'll try and be high IQ, okay, so we'll start we'll give it another minute. We'll say if any of the girls are coming, then we'll see. Hey Pat, and so obviously Patrick is been on my shows. He's the saint also. So and yeah, great episode. The great work. Patrick's a really knowledgeable person. I look up to him a lot in like that way. So thank you, Pat, and obviously we love having you here. So we're a speculative space. We're plus ultra space. We just act like magic's real. We don't. There's no gimmick. There's no. We don't talk around it. We use Kabbalah. We use Tantra. We use Buddhism. We use all the ontological frames. So we try and express it in almost universalist way. Obviously, we're not necessarily universalist, but maybe you could say we even do it in a Gnostic way. So I think that's a large part of what I personally was thinking about in today's space. Obviously, the title is Axial Age Gnostic, and I'll do a proper introduction if any of the girls end up showing up. But that is what I've been thinking about. Like, I interviewed the Toby Chapel guy. Okay, that clarified a lot. Did now doing a 5-part series with Heidi. Then I got invited to go on her show. We're going to talk about Mormon Solomonic magic, which I think will be really cool. Heidi does have more of a, we'll say, she's like more in the truth sort of circles, but she's really knowledgeable about shit, like way more than I think anyone really knows. And she has some. I think she's open to being like Gnostic. So I'll try and I'll do my best. I'll try and pass the torch. We'll say very convenient, very Jason Bird on me. So yeah, that's what is Gnosticism? Are we Gnostic? Yeah, we're neo-Gnostic. We're speculative Gnosticism. That's really what it is. I was even thinking about this. I said this to Ron or John. John, that's what I said it to. I said it to John. I said, I think that our space is really not just the spaces, but maybe even our group chat. It's just like it's about speculative Gnosticism, excuse me, and it really is about how we're piecing together this kind of axial or perennial or it's a shadow solar traditionalist framework. Like, what are we seeing here? It can be interpreted in multiple ways. Does it make sense? Is it logically coherent? And yes, I think actually every space, regardless of how good it is, obviously these are just gonzo spaces. They're just lives where, excuse me, a lot of it is obviously me, well, at least partly me, doing stream of consciousness, like just thinking about things, reacting to things, then we discuss the book or we discuss like the separate. But I think that generally, and then with the conversation, especially since we restarted doing the spaces, I think that's been extremely generative for my own thinking as well as I think it makes it more dynamic. And I think it makes it a lot more interesting for other people to hear. Not that I don't think I'm interesting, because obviously I do. So, um, but I think that's what it is. It's speculative Gnosticism. We're looking at the story. Obviously, I brought this idea, the Aeon, the daughter, the Nuria, the princess, uh, Fire and Flowers, as I call her. Obviously, this does have Klopothic sort of equivalent, and I've always known that, but I don't interpret it as that. Like, yes, in a way, but yes, also like not in a way, because she stands on desire, right? Standalone loss. So it's not really, it's the same, but it's not the same. So so I brought it back there. We've spoken about the father, spoken about the mother, spoken a lot about the son, probably the most about the son. Second to the daughter, obviously. Sorry, Matt, please go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I don't know if you're using your mic or some other setup, because it's a little bit.
There, is that better?
A little bit.
Okay, let me switch. Solar
Yeah.
and I recorded without any. I didn't wear.
Yeah, it's just like intermittently kind of fading out. And yeah, I was about to say something. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's see. There, is that better?
Much better. Thanks.
Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you very much, Matt. I appreciate it. So I'll do a proper intro now, and I'll just fast forward it. I'm Jin the fucking Ninja. Welcome to the Grey Lodge. I host a show called Threshold Saints. This is a plus ultra space. We believe magic is real. It's a speculative. I was kind of waxing, I guess, philosophically in a way, speculatively we could say. So it's a speculative Gnostic space. I titled it Axial Age Gnosticism or Axial Age Gnostic. This is our sort of gonzo Saturday night Gnostic Mass, but I usually call it Friday night Gnostic Mass, and then some clever title that I come up with. And so I'm just the co-host, the guide, I guess, the voice of the moderation. And so I have to do shout outs for everybody. And so, of course, I have as my co-host Matt Mora, our tarot, Kabbalah, great dude, amazing. Been since like very early on. We've gone up and down through many things, and it's been amazing. I think Matt is like a great dude, a great knowledge, a flame in the world, you could say, a fire in the world, a spark of splendor. Thank you, Matt. And I obviously extend that also to Solar Exile. Solar just recorded a 2-hour amazing episode on Evola and Dharma. Then we have Ashley. So shout out to him. That's like a trooper. Like 2 hours to do. It can be a lot and it can feel like a lot, but I felt it was super generative. I didn't feel tired. I went and did stuff. I fed the horses. I made dinner. It wasn't, it would, didn't, I wasn't, it was kind of invigorating, to be honest. It was kind of very interesting and really amazing conversation. I can't wait for that. Obviously, we have he is a saint, a threshold saint, obviously, and Joshua the Branch, who is coming on to do Resident Evil. So he's obviously been on my show before, episode 39, Speaking in Tongues, and I love Joshua. I think he's a great dude. He hooked me up with Chris from the King of Cups. Shout out Chris. Amazing. We're doing the four part. Sorry, I can't commit 5 parts from Chris. That would be a little unfair. But we're doing a 4-part series on Avatar, The Last Airbender. So we're breaking it down by elemental book. So we're doing 3 books plus Korra. So I think it'll be really amazing. We've recorded one. It was pretty epic, and I'm really excited for that. Patrick was. I don't know, just like kind of like honestly, like someone that when I have had a hard time in the last 3 months, I've kind of pestered a little bit, but he has always been stalwart. He's always been kind to me, and he is extremely knowledgeable, and I respect him a great deal. And thank you so much, Patrick, for coming. Obviously, episode 34, Apotheosis. It's called The Great Work. It was truly a great work, and so thank you, Patrick. Ashley, Think Change Repeat from Union of the Unknowns. You'll have to tell me how I did after, but Ashley is one of my longest podcasting friends, probably my longest actually. My longest podcasting friend, and she also has been on my show. That episode is unaired, but we just recorded it, so it wasn't like, I know I joke about, and it's not really a joke. I am a little slow with editing, but it is coming, and we only recorded it recently, so it's okay. It's not so embarrassing. So that will be really great. And Ashley's also coming on to my show to do a fantasy novel
decode kind of like React series. I think it'll be really cool, really fresh. And I've never done a lit series, and it's like obviously fantasy, but as J. David Osborne says, genre fiction is the true fiction. So, and I agree. Genre fiction is the true keynote. Let's just be honest. Maybe not always. Obviously, I don't read that much genre fiction, but I do read a lot of nonfiction and a lot of historical kind of, fiction. So, yeah, I think it'll be awesome. I can't wait. And so Joseph Reed, watercolor. So Joseph Reed, I just want to shout out. He has been to every space since we relaunched. Thank you so much, Joseph. Greatly appreciated. It's amazing to see you here. It's amazing to see people and the response we have been getting as a group. It's quite, it's a little overwhelming, I would say, but I got over a lot of my nerves, I guess, doing this through Aeon of the Daughter. Obviously, that also happened through the Grey Lodge. And, thousands of people listen to those spaces. It's like crazy to think about in a way, because it's like, was I nuts? Like, was I nuts to do something like that? Like, what the fuck was I even thinking? But I did it. A speculative Gnostic gospel of love is what I called it. And so, yeah, I even have an idea for part 13, to be honest. But that's a little in the future. And so, last shout out, watercolor mirror. So watercolor mirror, and I actually have had a DM open for like a year and a half, and I had no idea. So it was a question, like just something like very, nothing, like not a big deal. And then I realized, like, yeah, he's been coming to spaces. So thank you so much, watercolor mirror. Appreciate it. And I'm glad that we attract like different and new people, and even people who've been mutuals for a long time. Like I'm you know, I don't always remember. So thank you so much. And okay. So, Axial Age Gnostic. So we are going to do Donald Michael Craig, Modern Magic. I have it open, page 36. I didn't choose that. It just is the page that we left on. Part 5 of the Lesser Banishing Pentagram. And we will continue from there. But I do want to just say about the theme, or I guess, or the speculative title, Axial Age Gnostic. What is that? Are we a Gnostic space? Yes, I think speculative Gnosticism is a good broad category. Is that an identity label? No. I don't think I don't think Gnostic is necessarily the most useful identity label. I know a lot of other people do identify as Gnostics, and I'm not saying I don't identify as a Gnostic. I'm just saying, what is that? Is it just someone who's engaged with wisdom literature that is considered to be in this broad category? To me, that's all it is. So I've just, through these spaces, I've come to the realization, like, yeah, there's a lot in the Gnostic literature. There's a lot in like Jewish wisdom literature, the more heterodox ones, that I can totally react to. Like, I can totally like, take of it and do some. Feel like there's something interesting. There's a story to be told there. So I think that, I think in many ways, like, what did John say? John said he had the best tweet about this. The bend is not the end, right? Make Christianity weird again. Like, like the modern American religion. What is that? The modern American religion is weird, mystical Christianity. I mean, that's what I think. I think it makes sense. I think Americans are weird and kind of spiritualist, and the syncretic, and they brought in everything. That's okay. Just sift the bullshit out, and you could actually distill something interesting. Please, Solar, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask, like, do you think, because Gnostic, as you said, can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, and I was wondering if you think it, like, definitionally has to imply a kind of adversarial and unidirectional relationship to the material world, right? As kind of like a fundamental unifying characteristic of all different kind of Gnostic tendencies. And the reason I ask is specifically because of kind of where you were taking this, as far as like sort of new American, like, low Christianity or whatever, or like popular Christianity. It seems to have, I don't want to say the cliche of it's a very sort of like materialist spirituality, but I think that has as much to do with like the sort of like state of material affairs that we've enjoyed for so long, but also the basis in Reformed Protestantism, right? And essentially, like the original version of the prosperity gospel that the Puritans and other sort of like Reformed founders kind of brought here, with respect to the the material world and material prosperity, signifying a redeemed covenantal relationship with God, which would seem to be very anti-Gnostic, right? I don't know. Do you think that's correct?
Yes, I think it's correct. Like, great question, phenomenal question, as always. I'm so glad you asked this, because I was thinking of this. I was like, how can I bring up this idea of like the antinomian Gnosticism as a broad episteme, or maybe exactly what you said, Solar. Like, it doesn't really mean that. To me, it doesn't really mean that. To me, it just means you're engaged with the broad category of wisdom literature that is, epistemologically deemed Gnostic. That's it. Now, is there some Gnosticism that is interpreted as antinomian? For sure, 100%. That's very common, obviously, in the biblical scholarship of Gnosticism. This is a charge of the certain, desert fathers, and like Irenaeus and Origen and all those people. So they're reacting to Gnosticism in a specific context, and sometimes they say it's antinomian. But I also think that it depends on the group, and also, as we discussed many times, like, there are different groups interpreted the same text differently. And so I also want to point out that I do reject the kind of Calvinist inclinations of American Protestantism. I know this makes Americans very uncomfortable, because they don't like Catholicism. Okay, fine. But if you're anti-Illuminist, I'm just going to point this out. So that someone made this point, and it was really good. I can't remember who it was, but it was someone that I podcasted with. I think it was Gordon White, actually. Gordon fucking White. He said, and I didn't agree with him on a lot of things. On most things, I don't agree with him, actually. But maybe not most things. But I think it was, I think like 60-40, okay? So, but he said this, and it was true. And he said that if you're truly anti-Illuminati, you'll be pro-Catholic. Now, do I think that's a little facile and like not really tapped into like how that really the dynamics of the lines of thinking? Do I think it makes, is it logical? Yeah, it's logical, but I think it's missing a big part of the picture. But I think it's a good general statement. It's like, what are you reacting to? So just to bring it back to what Gnosticism is and what Solar asked. I don't think it is. I don't think it necessarily. I think Dharma is very Gnostic. I think Tantra is very Gnostic. It's not antinomian. It's not not inherently antinomian, and it's not body rejecting necessarily. I have seen, like, there are Theravadan people who are more maybe influenced by doctrine of degradation and sort of the tulip ideology, but I would say most of it is just like mind over matter, like mind over body, and it's not really rejection. So I would say I don't approach Gnosticism in any way as a rejection of the corporeal form. Maybe it's more tantric of me, but I think it's like it's an enjoyment body. It's like we're here to experience. We're here to not fuck up too bad, but there's room. There's there's a little room. So we work things out. That's what we do. We are on the Magi's journey, as we argued, and we work things out through the Sephirah, or through our spiritual practices, and we come to the result that we come to. But this is something Solar brought up, and then I'll let Joshua go, because I see his hand. I'm sorry, Joshua. But Solar brought up the idea. Well, we discussed the idea of dynamism, and how there's really no fixed self, and people get very stuck on this idea of like a singular identity, a fixed self, and what is that really? And so I just think, it's not, just be non-dual, just approach it non-dually, and you'll have fun, and you'll be fine. Okay, I'm sorry, Joshua, please go, and then Patrick. Joshua, are you still up?
Yes, sir. So when you were talking, it reminded me of the Cathars. I think that they were a sect of Christianity that had incorporated some aspects of like the demiurge and Sophia and this and that. And I think the way they saw it was they saw the Old Testament God as the demiurge, and that we were being imprisoned in these incorporeal bodies. And so I think they took their philosophy to the extent that they didn't even like procreate. And so I guess that's why they're not around anymore. So I think, what that person said about, if you want to be anti this, be that, well, if you take that too far, though, you even extinguish that. So, because I would say they are a good example of that, maybe. And I also had a theory, just hearing you guys talk about it. Is Gnosticism really pre-logos? A lot of traditions only start after the word starts, right? But like, obviously, there was stuff going on before we ever started writing anything down or being told what was going on. So I think Gnosticism is kind of touching on beyond human limits, beyond human understanding. And I think that's kind of emphasized by the fact that you got Keter, Chokmah, and Bena, because Gnosticism means like wisdom or whatever, right? So that would be kind of like the upper Sephiro, which are not even of this world. So it's like our attempt to seek knowledge that's not earthbound, as it were. Anyway, I just wanted to add that.
Phenomenal, as always. Thank you, Joshua. I totally agree with you, and I'm going to let Patrick speak, but I do have a kind of response to it, but I'll wait. Patrick, please go ahead.
Thanks, guys. And forgive me, I'm in an airport, so if it gets loud, just let me know. I'll mute. But first, so my original reason I wanted to come up was to ask a question to the best read amongst you regarding Gnosticism, about the antinomianism of the Ophite thread, et cetera, and the difference between an explicit and directed, sort of like conscientiously directed antinomianism at the roots of like a system versus practices which can be viewed as antinomian by outsiders who don't understand the cosmological like context of why things are being done. So there's like a distinction there, and I don't know where they land, but I wanted to probe that in the context of the Ophite thread particularly. But separately, I guess what came up in my mind with when Matt was, I think it was Matt, whoever just spoke, sorry if I said it wrong, was relating to this. It actually connects to Twyman. So she talked about in several interviews, which have been taken down now, she talked about the tortured confessions, right? The confessions that were gotten under torture about what the Templars were doing, the urination on the cross and all that stuff. And we can say, I mean, I'm big picture enough to say just because the actions look like that, I might not ascribe the word antinomian to it. I think that would be a minority, but we could find a way to say that's not antinomian, I suppose. But there was a second round of confessions that was not under torture by the Pope. And Twyman dug into this history, and I guess it was a woman in the Vatican who brought forward the book maybe like 15, 20 years ago, or it could have been less than that, 10, 15 years. It was only published in Italian, in Italian. And so Twyman had it translated or worked with someone who could read it. And in that recounting, they talk about the Templars doing all of the things that, it kind of got washed over and said, oh no, that's all just a bunch of BS by jealous kings who don't want to pay their loans or whatever. But in fact, no, there was a tremendous amount of firsthand accounts of members who said, no, this is what we did. And they gave that admission freely without the threat of torture or anything on a second go around of Inquisition there. So for whatever that's worth, and however that bears out the idea of antinomianism with the Templars, etc. But my real question was if anyone in the crowd can speak to the antinomianism or perceived antinomianism of the Ophite thread, because that's something I'm working on myself. And this idea of antinomianism, particularly amongst the Illuminists of the 18th century, comes up significantly in my work. And Frankism is predicated on an antinomian, position. And I'm not saying that's Gnosticism, but certainly there was a syncretism in coming out of the Renaissance and into the later centuries that where it becomes hard to distinguish the threads, and it really just becomes Plato's soup in their hands. So I don't know. I laid that out. I'll go back on mute, and I appreciate anyone that wants to chime in on that and give some insight.
Thank you so much, Patrick. That was again a phenomenal question. I appreciate that. We have all the boys plus Ashley tonight. So Ashley's used to that. So I'll let Joshua respond. I also want to offer Solar or Matt, if you want to respond, if you have anything you want to respond. I do have maybe the back part of that question, like the Ophite question, I think I could respond to, but I'm going to wait obviously I want Joshua to go or any of the other boys to go. So, Joshua, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I don't know what antinomianism meant, so I was hoping maybe you could explain that. And then, as far as what ophites, I think refers to the snake cults or something like that. So it was reminding me of the ancient woman and the snake parable in the Bible, or the prophecy rather, about crushing the head of the serpent, but it bruising her heel. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. So anyway, thank you. I just wanted to comment.
Antinomianism is like against the law. So it's just the practice of explicitly, or actually, I'm sorry, let me mute. You guys are the pros. I'm to get out of here.
Patrick, it's totally fine. You can jump on. I just do this
this
because
is your
it
space
keeps
too.
it orderly.
Yeah, so as I understand it, antinomianism is when you understand the dictates of a law within a religious system and then explicitly intend to violate. So an example is in the Sabbatean episode 1660s, 70s, 50s, whatever, there was a prescription against eating on certain holy days where you would fast. So they'd explicitly set up a position of feasting on those fast days. And when there's explicit outlawing of sexual practices, such as bestiality, they would say explicitly we engage in that act. Those are, and that is antinomianism as a thread of ideology, where you say, what's the law? Let's do the opposite. The rationale can be for many reasons. This law is of a God we don't believe in. By violating these laws, we increase the bad in the world, and that will cause Mashiach to come sooner, which is the ostensible position of the Frankists and the Sabbateans. The rationale aside, antinomianism simply is, here's the law, let's do the opposite. Fuck those guys, basically.
Thank you.
Awesome. Amazing. Great. Obviously, Patrick never fails to impress. Okay, Matt, please go ahead. And then Joshua. And then Solar. Okay.
Okay, awesome. So I wanted to speak quickly on that because I feel like it's interesting topic. Like, let's say you get people, you get a specific culture. Let's say you get people that don't eat specific types of meat, right? Because of their religious practices. You could say that you need to do all these kind of things if you want to be part of the culture, because otherwise you're going to be left outside. You're going to be an outsider, right? So it's very interesting that you have the antinomianism guys trying to literally be the opposite. But at the same time, if they are always being the opposite of a specific culture, they are kind of still related to that culture somehow. It's kind of, they are still not non-dual, right? They're still dual. They're still just the opposite of the ones. It's kind of like somebody trying to be Satanist and trying to reject like the Judeo-Christian God. They are still, against the Judeo-Christian God. So they're still like, they're just some anti-Christian or whatever, anti-Catholic. So that's very interesting to see. Even though they may, like you said, the rationale makes sense. Like you're trying to be against the specific God or whatever. So you're trying to do everything that he doesn't like. But at the same time, you're still feeding to that egregore. You're still keeping that idea alive in a sense. But in another way, I find that very interesting because, for example, if you take the average people when they're doing average actions. So here I'm not talking specific cultures, right? But just in average, I would be a person that would likely go against the average. Like if everyone is getting a mask and doing something, I'm like, okay, maybe that's weird. Maybe let's look the other way. Or if everyone says, oh, doing this specific thing, it's bad for you. Like let's say, or you should always, use sunscreen or whatever, sun cream. Maybe okay, why? Like that's to me at least an alert to give a look into it. So I wouldn't necessarily say the being 100% antinomianism is good nor bad. It's just something I find interesting if you can use the correct filters for it.
Yeah, obviously I agree with this, Matt. Like I'm on this train that it like there's a lot more to it than just like the perceived action. I think Patrick even totally touched on this with his question. Anyways, I apologize. Joshua, please go ahead.
I think Solar was before me.
I'll just jump in to get out of your way because I don't have anything to contribute regarding the Ophites. I'm famously ignorant when it comes to like the classic Gnostic block, and I think I don't really have anything more to add on the Frankists because you basically underline their MO. I just think like a useful sort of categorization here, and this kind of came up, I think, maybe in the last space, if not the space before, is kind of an absolute antinomianism versus a instrumental like antinomianism. Um, so the absolute antinomianism is maintaining a fixed frame of reference, kind of like the Frankists, right? Where they are specifically trying to go against, for their own reasons, and you can be doing this for any reasons, but you're trying to reject a specific framework, moral, ontological, whatever, um, for whatever reasons, versus like an instrumental antinomianism where you're saying, look, I am going to reject these rules, sort of strategically or tactically break these rules as a way of loosening myself up, of making myself sort of more ductile, more flexible, right? So that I am less trapped, sort of within the logic or assumptions of a certain system, right? And I think I made this point in a previous space, and I genuinely believe this, that the latter, that kind of instrumental antinomianism, not for its own sake, but as a technique, can be tremendously useful for people, right? As a way of sort of breaking out of conditioning, programming, whatever, right? But it's never for its own sake. And personally, I find the like anti-cosmic, that kind of like absolute antinomianism that you find in a lot of like what I consider like the shitty, like stupid end of the left-hand path, like insufferable, right? Because it's as Matt said, it's pure rejection of mommy and daddy's like Christianity, while still remaining completely 100% within the frame of that, right? You haven't actually gotten anywhere. You're just like putting up a middle finger, and there's really nothing to that.
That was phenomenal. I want to say one thing really quick, and then I'm going to let Joshua then Matt go. Is that I think that distinguish the two is so important, and I totally agree. As a ritual methodology, it's great. I'm not talking about like hurting anything or like any of that. I'm talking about strictly like directionality, understanding like quadrant positions, like it's more technical, I would say. So I agree. I think it's very Peter Carroll pilled solar. So immediately what I thought of, I was like, oh yeah, we're reading the verses backwards, uh, but it's useful. That's just something we do in Tantra. I've talked about this. So, uh, but it's not exactly. It's not for antinomianism for its sake. It's actually to do. There's a metaphysical kind of like potency and implication that makes those actions potent, but it's not in the action itself. It really, you still have the same bodhicitta as you do going clockwise. So that's really what it is. Okay, sorry, Joshua, please go ahead, then Matt, and then I'm not going to respond anymore.
Thanks again for explaining the antinomialism. So it reminded me of basically, maybe not everybody agrees with this, but I kind of see Paul and Christianity as basically doing this because instead of honoring the law and following it, Christianity's kind of departed from the Judaic law. And so I kind of view that as the same thing because the end result of that is now not keeping the feasts, keeping non-Christian holidays like Easter, Christmas, so on and so forth. And the result of that ends up being judgment when Christ does return, right? Because then he judges the 7 churches, and only 2 of the 5 are even like doing what they're supposed to do, right? So I would kind of see the fruit of prophecy as like going to the parable of the vineyard and all. Well, the base of the tree of prophecy is being fertilized, but with what? So it seems like the Frankists kind of make the approach. They're fertilizing the tree with the klipa. I always stumble with that word. So they're fertilizing the tree with the klipa to produce a higher fruit, as it were, right? So I think that's their mentality, is they redemption through sin or something like that, I think is how they went. Or their motto was. And so I think there is that belief that they can force God to act if they make the earth full of sin or whatever. It's just that, and see, from the perspective of psychology, that's like intentional acting out of a child and being punished, but that's like a form of attention, right? So it almost seems like it's a dysfunctional relationship with the Father God, as it were, where instead of getting the attention in a positive way, they only get it in a negative way.
I just want to do 2 shout outs. Obviously, Shakti, amazing. Yogini from our group chat, all the way from Japan. Thank you so much, Shakti, for joining us. We have Rosa and we have Dawnland. Thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it. The spaces don't happen without the public, I guess. And this is a weird, this is like high weirdness. This is like magic is real in this space. So if you're here, just be prepared for that. Okay, Matt, please go ahead.
Yeah, as you guys were talking, I remembered an idea as well, which may be tied to that, which is like, if you think about it, at least from my perspective, Catholicism is basically Rome seeing that they don't need to keep up with physical battles. Like, why do I need to keep up with like military and subjugating people if I can just control their minds? So let me create, like, let me get the symbols that people already use, let me create something and let's go with it. And then they create all this history about, okay, you have now the wolf, and then you are the lamb, you should be scared as the lamb, you should be scared of the wolf, and so on. But as you see, they're like playing both sides, because Rome would be the wolf, but they're saying that they have the savior as well, and so on. So you have this idea again of maybe people thinking they're against something, but at the end of the day, they're again still just being controlled. And talking specifically more about the Ophites, which I think we didn't talk a little bit now. To me, it really seems like serpent cult is probably tied to the serpent path. So like going up the tree from Malkuth up. So then it makes a lot of sense, the antinomianism, because you're coming from the body, right? You're not, let's say, getting from the highest of highs and then bringing stuff down. You're yourself trying to bring up, and that's highly related to things like left hand pad and so on as well, because they're like giving the body power. You're saying like, okay, I'm getting the energy like up, not bringing it down. So it's a very different way of working the energies. There was one last thing I wanted to bring. Let me see if I remember. 1 second. No, yeah, if I remember afterwards, I'll talk about. But yeah, basically that idea of the Ophites, like using the tree going from Malkuth up instead of going down, right? Which again, we bring back to fucking like Enki and all the Quetzalcoatl, all the fucking serpent codes that we have all around the world. So doesn't surprise me that they use this specific symbol.
Well, as you know, Matt, I think that Rahu Ketu is the dragon that you're referencing. He's the most dualistic. He's also Vishnu. So Vishnu is 1-to-1 Enki. They have shared names. This has been a long time scholarship presupposition that they're interrelated identities. So it makes complete sense, because in Buddhism, Vishnu gets an upgrade. He gets to be the king of space, the king of Tsa. So I think that was a great observation, and I agree with you. I'm gonna let Solar go, but I do have something to say about Ophites after. So I'll let Solar go, but I want to respond to Ophites after. Okay, Solar, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment about Frankism, actually. So, and this is where I think it's important. So yes, you can say like these people were antinomian, these other people are antinomian, so we want to like kind of group them. But I think that can be really dangerous, right? So, and again, it's not that I'm like some scholar of Frankism or anything, but I know a little bit. A couple of things stand out to me that are very like anti-Gnostic about them. So the first is that they are extremely archonic, if you will, in their understanding of sort of like divine contract law. Like their theology and methods may seem completely insane, and in a certain sense they were, but there is like an internal logic to it, right? Like even in like normie Jewish like thought, right? You have, I'm just using this as it's the example that came to mind. You have this discrepancy between the 280 years and the 400 years that Am Yisrael was supposedly in Egypt, right? And so some of the rabbinical commentaries trying to explain away this discrepancy, right? Like, well, was it 400 years or was it 280 years, right? Is that, oh, well, originally it was slated to be 400 years, right? That's a significant number, blah, blah, blah. But the degradation of basically every tribe except Levi was so dramatic that the timeline had to be accelerated from the original plan 400 down to 280. And even in the 280, they were like hanging on by their fingernails, right? And if God hadn't intervened, like right when he did, even the tribe of Levi would have like been lost completely, and the whole thing would have fallen apart, right? Like that's very like mainstream. Okay, so you can kind of understand like that combined with the generally, again, normie Jewish idea that, I mean, not just Am Yisrael, but the human race generally is like tasked with being co-participants in the creation and maintenance and ultimately redemption of the world, right? Which is a very, again, anti-Gnostic idea. If the Gnostics are just trying to eject themselves as individuals to go beyond, right, the archonic material reality, right? It's a very Jewish idea to say, well, let's basically sort of min-max like our efficacy in this material world by like, I don't know, fucking the pigs, so to speak, right? Or whatever the Frankists got up to doing their crazy like orgiastic, you know, pseudo-messianism stuff. It is kind of grounded in some more like traditional Jewish ideas than it is Gnostic. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if that makes sense, but
I think it makes sense, Solar. I think it actually even draws into what I was going to say about the Ophites, to respond to Patrick's like question. Is that like it's a matter of perspective. It's also a matter of cosmology. I think you make a great point about this. Is like, what do people believe? Well, you never can really know what people truly believe until you're, I guess, one of them. I guess is a common paradox of anthropology. But I think this applies to the Gnostics as well. It's like, what are they? Like, who are the Ophites? Like, yes, I'm very familiar with like the hypothesis. I live read it on one of the Aeon of the Daughter spaces. I live read the Epinoia of Nuria, but now I've expanded so much more. I live read Thunder Perfect Mind, and so who are these people? Like, is it these are the texts themselves are, I would say, are not truly contained in any maybe one category of Gnostic. And we know this is true. They were passing maybe slightly differentiated versions among different sects and different kinds of formations. They just had different interpretations. Their perception of the word changed. Their relationship with the, flame of consciousness. They're looking at the black word on the scroll, and the meaning to them is based in their preconception. So like Solar perfectly said it, they're demiurgic. They're archonic. They give into the basal impulse. But yes, it does serve a ritual prescription as well, of course. But Ophites specifically, they're so in the paraphrase of Shem, which is a Setian text, it talks about how the serpent was never meant to be worshipped. That the serpent is just a husk. It even calls it that, I think, in the English translation, or at least the one I read. Sophia entered the serpent. She spoke to, well, I think in the Sethian, in that text, I think it's Adam first, but I can't remember. She spoke to one. She spoke to Eve, whatever. But the vessel became Eve. Like, who took on the gnosis? Well, it was Eve in the text. And then it says, then Sophia left the serpent, and it was but a husk, but a shell. That's why the serpent sheds its skin. That's what she was doing. It's not there's no serpent cult. But yes, if you're an Ophite and you preference a serpent, sure, you're going to deify the serpent. But it's not. There's so many different groups and so many different perspectives of like where you could take it and what you could say. But all in all, I would say that it's like I like the decoherence of it. I like to say, yeah, we don't know exactly what each sect meant, what each text even means, but there is a kind of non-dual way to understand it, where you're just kind of like, yeah, this is Gnostic, it's wisdom science. So maybe through this, secretly, through the process of reading it, engaging with consciousness and perception, you are doing, as to quote Solar, a noetic process. I don't know. Kind of interesting. Anyways, I'm sorry. Patrick, please go ahead. And then Matt.
Thanks. And I'll just be quick because I'm on a flight and it's filling up now. So I'm probably gonna have to hop off in a couple of minutes. But I just want to say two things. One, Solar, your point about the difference. I think I'm quite well read in Frankism, and I've read a lot of the writings of prominent Frankists when the ideology was taken off. So we could get into the roots of a lot of those ideas, but the fundamental thing you said about Gnosticism and Frankism, or Judaism explicitly not being Gnostic, like inherently there being like differences there. I think there's a lot of merit to that, and I think most scholars would agree that you don't really see much. At least there's no provenance to information that gives us an indication that there's cross pollination between Gnosticism and Judaism. But of course, you're looking at the world through a simulation theory framework. You're going to arrive at somewhat similar frames around big ideas. It makes sense. But the big point I wanted to just add in, or I guess just like comment on top of what everyone else said, is antinomianism can't exist in a vacuum because which someone made the point before. It's like it's a necessary dualism, like Satanism as like a function of Christianity, not as an independent thing. So anything that is explicitly antinomianism, as we would qualify it, has to be in opposition to something else, which is interesting. But the main point is the will of Canaan, which exists in the Babylonian Talmud. It's like PER.113b. You can read it. It's five little lines. And the law of Noahide covenant. If you juxtapose those, that's the earliest root of an explicitly antinomian tradition that I can find. Noah gets the laws: don't kill, don't steal, be of one people with God, like love God, whatever, and like kill people who don't follow these laws. This is the Noahide laws. And then shortly thereafter, I think it's his grandson, Canaan, comes out with the will of Canaan and says, like, love to steal, love sexual perversity, like lie to your masters, which are the people who love God, like love thievery, and goes out with an explicitly, this is his last will and testament to his people. So this is like a very interesting facet of history. I think it sets up a juxtaposition which you can track for literally millennia after that. And I'm not saying that there isn't an equally valid, Eastern frame that can give us the insight too, but in terms of European history that goes back to biblical histories and biblical bloodlines, the laws of Noah versus the will of Canaan is the clearest and most obvious, like, quote unquote, antinomian explicit like doctrine I've ever seen. So I'll leave it at that. I'll listen as long as I can, and then I'll hang up when they kick me off my phone. Thanks for all your words, guys. Appreciate it.
That was so great, Patrick. Thank you so much for saying that. And obviously, Solar, if you have anything you want to respond with, I'll let you do that. I think that there's a really interesting episteme, and then I'm gonna let Matt go. I'll be really quick. Is that the Temple of the Black Sun, which is like a Norwegian kind of like satanic, I don't know, organization, we'll say, they would accept this kind of like line of Chan. And so I think this is a common sort of narrative thread through a lot of like contemporary left hand path practices or books. And so I don't know, there's something really interesting about that is like maybe there always has to be like an anti-hero. Maybe it is like what Patrick said. Maybe it's like completely dialectical. But then if you like kind of cut the dualism out of it and you say, yeah, fuck that shit, we're going to be non-dual and we're going to approach it like conceptually, I don't know, I personally think that is like a way to cut through both. You don't have to engage in either the right or left hand. Yes, Matt, please go ahead.
Yeah, as always, middle path, right? So I just wanted to bring two quick points. The one that I remember I wanted to talk about, you quickly brushed on not fixating on the techniques, like using this antinomialism as a way to, technically, let's say, you can change up the rituals or whatever, you can adapt to the rituals. And that's something, again, we always talk about, like not fixating on the Sephiroths so they don't explode, they don't become husks. So just wanted to bring this point that you talked about. And another one, which is like the serpent can mean many things, right? Like you said, it becomes a husk, but the serpent can also we can understand it as like first of all, the DNA, like as the fucking DNA being explored by us, and then we understanding that. So again, the Genesis, the ISIS genetics. So the serpent can also be, if we take it in Portuguese, we have serpente, which is like a 5 being, so like a being with 5 parts. So we have the head, 2 arms, 2 legs, right? So again, we are talking about beings that have the quintessence, right? The 5 elements. And you can go so on, so on. So again, not fixating on the serpent as the animal, but the idea that it brings. Always trying to get the abstract of it, the symbol, not the literal thing. So that's very helpful as well.
Well, okay, I'm going to let Joshua go, but really quick. So I agree with you, Matt. I agree with you 100%. It's like a necessary vehicle. You can think of the serpent as a hecalot. It's the vehicle. It's like everybody knows that we don't use the seven. I don't use the 7 chakra system. I use the tantric system, which is 5. But it doesn't matter. So if you're using it, the serpent, as a metaphor for kundalini, that's perfectly fine. If you're using it more as a conceptual metaphor, like rising through exactly what Matt said, you're rising through kind of that left hand, at least perspectively, left hand path approach, that more material. But you need that. You have to have that as a magician. You're bringing idea into form. Like, that's what you're doing. That's the whole fucking point. So if you cannot, like, if you can't, you have to bring the lightning in. That's it. So the serpent's necessary. And you're going to produce aggregation. You're going to produce skanda. You're going to produce klipas. But you have to also know how to clear them. And I think that that's where it becomes like that question of skillfulness. And like, how much implication are you causing in the world, like through the way that you're maneuvering it? So anyways, yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
I was thinking of another metaphor concerning like the house of God and Father God, and how the firstborn had a lot more rules and commandments and so on and so forth. There was a higher standard for them, just like you would have with your firstborn. And there's a lot of pride that goes along with that. But with each subsequent generation, just like we were talking about a little while ago, some generations after the high watermark, things begin to degrade. And so eventually it's like, okay, well, you can't keep 613 commandments. Let's try 10 and see how that goes. And so if you think of it from a parental perspective, it's like, okay, well, first of all, don't burn down the house. Second of all, don't kill your siblings. What are the basics here? And so it's like, otherwise you incur the wrath of God. And that's the left hand thing. So imagine then having like 10 children. Well, 10% of people are left-handed, right? So one of those 10 children is probably going to be the left-handed child. In a sense, maybe they break rules for attention because there's 9 other children and they have to vie for attention, that sort of thing. So I think that inherently, as we find ourselves now in this generation, the rules are distilled down even further. 10 commandments reduced to 1. Love thy neighbor. Is that, that's what Christ taught us, right? So if we can't even get that right, well, then now judgment, right? So I think it's kind of interesting how the rules themselves are distilled down, and then the world itself is like more overwhelmingly anti-nomial than nomial as it was in the beginning. And I always think of things through the lens of Christianity or Judaism. So I think the snake's role in that is interesting, because in the beginning, when man was ignorant, the snake had much wisdom. Now we have as much wisdom as the snake. So he also has less influence on us in this last generation, I think. So, because we're taught to be as wise as serpents. So I think that inherently implies that they do possess wisdom. And this brings me to my last point. I'll try to be brief. But normally when we see the serpent depicted on the man and it's on the legs, it represents governing the lower chakras, or more like the klipa type energy. But then sometimes you see the serpent depicted on the left arm of like Samael or Isis or whomever. And so whoever had the role in the temple of delivering the bite of death or the sting of death, whether it be a snake, scorpion, or a sword, you do follow this law or else. That's kind of that thing there with this nomialism in general, right? So there's something regarding like the way things are structured in general, the spiritual mechanics, and how that's dialed up and down. Leave your hands off the thermostat, don't kill each other. Anyway, thanks.
I'll just answer really briefly to this, because I think I have something clever that Joshua will appreciate. So my response, just in totality, is that you always rectify the 5 and the 4 in the 9, in the mind, in time. So the fire and the water and the pristine space of consciousness, the moon, the moon disk. You could think of it like that. That's kind of like what you're doing. That's like, you want everything to be in synthesis. You want, like Matt says, it's like middle pillar. Like, yes, That's your starting point, your base, your foundation, right? And so if you can live in that loving kindness most of the time, at least in let's say this is the outer density of that. I know it's complicated. I know the water subdues the fire a little bit, and I know the fire kind of overwhelms the water. It has to be in kind of like a flow, a flux, right? And I think that's also what's interesting, shout myself out, is the aeon of the daughter space, is because I said, like, she's in flux, she's dancing, she is not fixed, she's love without desire. She literally stands on the demon of lust, this demon of desire, and she's dancing. This doesn't mean she is also the world. Like, she is that concept. It's like the world that we see, the light, the implication of the light on our consciousness. It's also the things inside of us, and it's also like the beauty of the world, the Maya. So I don't know. I think that love resolves all things. The one is always the 10. The 10 is always the one. There's a reason why that is. The 0 is the Shakti. It's the Sephira. It's the Shekinah. It's the Ruach. That's it. So you just resolve everything in love. Doesn't always mean turn the other cheek. Certainly, obviously, we've talked about that a million times. And it doesn't also mean that you hate someone because, like, your internet thought leader tells you to hate someone. You have to make your own decision. You have to know thy will. But it's like, right? It's like, but it's also, it's love over will. That's the theme of the Yuga. So, anyways, that's my interpretation for what it's worth. Please, Matt, go ahead.
That was very nice, Jin. So one thing that I also remember here, that the archetype, let's say, is connected to the serpent and therefore Satan archetype, is the 15 tarot arcana, which the configuration that I use is Samech. So then you have this idea of the dualistic view on whether I should be virtuous or I should like use a vice. So again, if you reduce it, it becomes the 6, which is the lover, which is again a dualistic view, but whether I should be a villain or a victim. But then you have this idea of like the serpent, again, the S. You see how it's connected to Samech, the Satan character, and so on and so forth. And then you have this arcana basically being the moment where we are put against the rule. That's it. Like, what is virtuous, right? Like, we sometimes something can be seen as virtuous, but it's just because people are saying it is, right? There's no necessarily, depending on the type of culture you're living, it becomes quite lofty what exactly should be virtuous or what should be a vice. Some people might say, oh, okay, eating a lot is a vice, but then, well, is it? It depends a lot. So again, it's very interesting that it comes up to that arcana I just remembered, to the 15 one.
Okay, so that was really great, and I hope that everybody felt like that was a very fruitful exchange. I felt, and like very respectful, very awesome. Like, we can have divergences of opinion, and we can still like work it out, because that's what Kabbalah is for, right? Like, what's the point of us like spending all these, like, all those months, literally months, learning at least the basics of it, a framework, if we can't like have these exact discussions? So good job, you guys. Can gold stars for all of you. I see we have a request. Dawnland, if you, yeah, should we have we don't usually do that for the Grey Lodge spaces. We usually keep it pretty, within the lodges. But if you want to come up, sure, you can come up. And yeah, I'm getting some co-host approval. Okay, sounds good. Matt and Solar down. Joshua gave me a thumbs up. Okay, so Dawnland, if you want to come up and discuss Gnosticism, please do so.
Thank you so much. I'm definitely not as advanced as you guys, but I just went over the Gnostic text a couple days ago, the Adam and Eve story, and I just wanted to chime in a little bit and say that I guess for me, what I was thinking of is that Eve's spirit basically escapes into the serpent when she's being pursued by the demiurge, and she, in two versions of the story, she turns into a tree, which is the tree of knowledge. And I guess for me, and then if her physical body was attacked, and then that produced Cain. But I guess I just wanted to, chime in that that tree of life basically, for me, sort of points all the way, or the tree of knowledge points all the way to the tree of life, which is, I guess, at the end of this very end of the story. And yeah, sorry, never mind. If it's a, I'll let you guys talk. I really don't know what I'm talking about.
No, it was great. Thank you so much, Donland. We're down for it. And I think it's interesting because obviously we do discuss things in our very in-group way. And because we also have a group chat, so that's like sort of the premise of some of these spaces is like we all talk to each other about like metaphysical concepts and about Gnosticism and about Kabbalah. And like, so this is like a regular, oh, let me do a shout out. So we've got Avi in the house, Bull Brave Free, Lodge member since day one, Naga since day one. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming. She's been to every space except one, I think, and I think she listened back. So, you can't do better than that for real. Okay. So, to react to that, yeah, I think that that's a totally valid interpretation. I think that's one way to look at the Eve story. But like to bring up something Patrick said about the Ophites, the angel Eluleth tells the daughter Nuria that everything that they said that they did to Eve was bullshit. He says that they just use words, they just lie. That's like their thing. That's demiurgic. That's archonic. Is the lie. It's the perceptual lie. And as long as you can overcome your fear, overcome the lie that they present before you, then it cannot affect you. That's literally what he says to her. So I just think that's interesting because there are resolutions to certain paradoxes that we are given by saying, okay, hypothesis must be an Ophite text. Well, does it? Because you can read it from a Setian perspective. You can read it from one of the Barbarite perspective. Just think that's interesting is that you could, like very chaos magic, like you could switch frames of reference, ontological frames, and then you could view it in different ways. Yes, Joshua, I know you've been really patient. Thank you.
Anyway, I was just thinking because in the zodiac, you got the Virgo by the Scorpio or snake. It's also a sword sometimes, but it's been preserved to this day in that sense as a twilight language. And of course, the whole story is taken place within the context of the evening, right? So when the Sabbath began, that's when all this happened. So that whole name and everything's tied in there. But the tree, they don't normally tell you in church what kind of species it was, but it's a fig tree. And so the fig tree has this inherently female quality because you don't eat male figs, you only eat female figs. And you can make a gesture of the fig with your hand, and that's where you place your thumb between your index finger and middle finger, and you would point with it. And that was kind of like an insult back in the day, and I might have mentioned that last week. But so I find that story, that Gnostic story about the tree and Eve thing, she would have turned herself into a fig tree, essentially. That's what the tree of knowledge was. And then the two trees kind of makes me think of the Klippa and the Separate. The Separate being the tree of life, the Klippa being the tree of knowledge and good and evil, but also brings death if you eat from it. So maybe technologies and things like that come from that tree, and we don't know which are toxic and what aren't. And humans have been eating from that for a long time, right? But the Tikkun Olam, repairing of the world, I think the Solar mentioned earlier, is kind of like eating instead of the tree up top, the Sephiroth. So what would be the mark of an advanced civilization, right? One that's eating from the tree of death and just getting lucky playing roulette. They got all this awesome technology, but then that's what happened with Atlantis, right? So but you could have, by contrast, a very successful civilization that only eats from the Sephiroth, and therefore they're preserved and no harm comes to them, but they're low tech, right? So I just find these stories very interesting. I would wonder if maybe technology is actually in those stories kind of too, as being like part of the fruit, part of the way judgment comes upon us is by way of this having forbidden knowledge or whatever, because we're actually becoming antinomial when we access that. We're like getting our hands smacked or whatever would make your parent want to kill you. There's like these trip scandas, right? the traps or whatever. We're unaware of them in this day and age, but yet there's these red lines. If you cross them, it's like, all right, now you've brought upon yourself certain wrath or whatever.
So yes, Solar, please go ahead. I do have a response though, but I'll let the boys go because everybody hears me all the time.
I think that's what most people are tuning in for, but yeah, you do you. Yeah, no, I just want to say, like, I used to sort of see things pretty much like one-to-one in how you just described, right? And I guess like I'm a little more like black pill these days, a little more cynical, and not to get into like sort of parapolitics territory or like, you know, sort of transhuman accelerationist territory. But at this point, like I do see a sort of like balanced approach of sort of like skillfully, very carefully, sort of like engaging with the sort of forbidden fruit, so to speak, as being perhaps like necessary to preserve a greater degree of sovereignty. Both, I mean, maybe not so much as an individual, but sort of at like a civilizational level. You know, like if we're sort of, if we want to talk more concretely about like specifically how we engage with the world, and, you know, our orientation towards like emerging technologies and stuff like that, or even just kind of like orientation towards like, you know, sort of speculative futures, right? We're talking a lot about certain things as we feel like we're hurtling toward the singularity with, you know, AI and, you know, CRISPR genomics and things like that, right? You know, something's going to happen. The thing is going to happen, right? And I don't know. I don't know if it's actually as simple as like, oh, we just gotta, you know, stick to, you know, it's time and you know, be good little boys and girls, because I see a lot of civilizations that basically don't exist anymore, or exist only in some like tiny fragmentary form, um, that essentially like ceded all possibility of willed action, at least at a collective level, because they like didn't respond to the pressures and necessities of the day for whatever reason. And I don't know that those like cultures and ideas and things like that are going to survive. Like I don't necessarily know that like the good guys win in the end just because they're like they have plot armor or something. Like I don't know that that's real life. I don't know. I'm not like totally black pilled on it, but I think like I'm a little more pragmatic when thinking about my own sort of political and metapolitical orientation towards the like medium and long term future, I guess.
Okay, so I thought that was great, but I'm not black pilled though personally, but I agree with like the broad what you said broadly. But like for me, like it's like the world is Babylon. It really is. What does that mean? It's non-dual, so it's what we build of it. Every moment an opportunity to build of it. Every moment to exert will to action or whatever, like meta political will or force, you could say. Maybe that's more tantric to say force. So that's what I think. I think like if we build it, that's what it is, and that's the true transformation. And like so, yeah, it can be like Babylon, it can be like the harlot, it can be like the Scarlet Woman of the end, but it can also be like the daughter of the beginning. That's kind of what, you know, it kind of resolves itself. It's like, what do we do with it? Maybe we abandon like the ideas, like exactly what you said, but just at a more ideological layer. Maybe we just abandon those seeds that didn't produce the greatest fruit. Maybe we're just like in a post ideological age, and you know, we're just like we're moving into a goetic, not a goetic, noetic age. We're moving into something where people are going to value higher knowledge. People are going to value that, like what we're talking about right now. Because yeah, we're engaging with it right now because we're all on a social media space, like broadcasting with electricity on our black cube matrix. So we're doing it right now. Like we're preserving, we're, you know, whatever it's fragments is all, it's like it's, but it's part of the archive now. It's like part of the tree. Like what does it mean? I don't know. What do you want it to mean? Yes, Matt, please go ahead. And then Joshua.
As Joshua was talking about the two trees being like the Sephiroth or the Clifas, it got to me, I think it was from my notes, if I'm not mistaken, from my Kabbalah classes, that it would make sense that the fruit that Eve ate is the act. So as in she ate the door to the other tree, really, because the act like bridges them both, right? So that was when she knew, okay, there's like this death tree, So the knowledge of good and evil is not necessarily like the tree itself, but the knowledge that, okay, there's a portal to a fucking place that the husks go. And maybe it's like it was too early for her to know that. If we take the perspective from the creators, right? Because think about it like this. If you go and you create a golem yourself, or you create like a mental, like a tulpa, whatever you want to call it, right? And you decide for it to not have knowledge of itself because you don't want it to go and do stuff around because you're responsible for it, right? If you create something, like if you bring a child into this world, you're responsible for it. So you don't want it to go and do shit. So basically, imagine, again, you have beings coming here, creating other beings, and then they become self-aware. Someone, the serpent, comes and gives them the knowledge of these things, and now they're self-aware. They're like, okay, fuck you. Like, you are just like me, but you had more information. Now I have the information as well. So I don't want to do the dirty work for you, basically. So then you start to see, again, the different perspectives, and that's why we have different people, or like people interpreting the same story differently. That's very interesting to understand as well. And then if we're talking about the Daath, another thing that comes, then let's speak a little bit about the numerology. Like, sure, it's not a sphere, let's say, but if we would take it as a sphere, it would be the 11th. It would be the next one, right? And then on the 11th, we have the one looking at itself. It's, again, the duality of like the light and the shadow, the mage looking at the shadow mage, and so on. So then again, you have to bring up the synthesis. While we have this idea of the rules that we have to follow, let's say we have the 7 Nohaid laws. Again, we have the 7 chakras, or you can even say like you have the 7 Nohaid laws. I think I bring this up in the chat once. The 7 Nohaid laws as the physical ones, as the analogical ones, and then the 7 hermetic laws as the digital ones, the spiritual ones. So then you have the 2 columns. Again, the right column being the spiritual one and the left column being the physical one. So then you have, in a way, the Nohaid laws being the left one. Very strangely, right? At least when I first saw it this way, I was like, okay, it wasn't intuitive to see that way, but it makes more sense because the left one is the physical, is the you. You're looking towards like what you should do, not in terms of like the how the cosmos works, let's say, which would be more like the hermetic ones, because it's you understanding the cosmos, basically.
Okay, I'm going to let Joshua go, but I do want to say thank you so much, Matt, for saying that. That was great, A. B, I want to, you reminded me of something that I initially wanted to refer to, but you've already said it. Like, yeah, she's going to death. She's eating the true seed. The seed is neither like living or dead. That's what death is. It requires that 1-to-1. It requires the plus, the ultra. That's where it is. It's where the spark of consciousness happens. It's not in the fire. It's not in the water. It's in both. And death is also a sphere of synthesis from Bina and Hokmah. It requires the text and it requires the experiential wisdom, both. Right? It's in the process of both. I know, Solar. I'm sorry. I've already told you. I've already said this exact line in front of Solar today, so he's probably over me. But that's okay. It's honestly, it's worth repeating. It's such an easy Kabbalistic, just a rule. You could. I don't want to say a rule, but yes, it is. I mean, it's just something that happens. So it makes sense to relate it to people because people get like way off base. They think they go to death and they think, "Wow, so I'm in the klipa." Okay, you're in the tree of death. Great. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to break the klipas? Are you going to like stay there with your like low emotion, low desire, low, all that shit? Like, is it the point to just worship Lilith? Like, is that like the end goal of the universe? Like, I mean, you can just do that anyways. All those things come up in the Sephirah. The klipas are already there. The thing is, Lurius knew this. He just said that people are already conceptually talking about it. It makes sense to give it a map, and I agree. It makes sense to give it a map. And if you're just speaking about it conceptually, it's perfectly fine to give it a map. But the problem is nothing is truly exists 100% conceptually, because then someone's going to be like, there's a little seed there. I'm gonna, plant, like, try and build upon it, and that's totally fine. But people started to use that as the primary map. That's not the primary map. The primary map is one tree. There is no shadow tree. The shadow tree is the klipa itself. That's it. It's the reflection, just like Matt said. The one and the one perceiving each other. Paradox cannot happen. That's why you have Kether. That's why I said the 1 and the 10 are the 10 is always the 1 and the 1 is always the 10. It's like, do you play with the polarities? Yes, that's fine. Play with the polarities. I agree. Obviously, that's what we all do, sort of. I mean, yeah, we do because we use words. Even that has a metaphysical implication. Okay, I'm sorry, Joshua and Solar.
I was just imagining as you were talking, and you're right. It's more like a shadow of the tree, and then I realized, oh, throughout the day, where that shadow is actually changes according to where the sun is, right? So it moves too. So it's like a perspective element there as well. I thought that was just profound. But what I think it was Matt mentioning earlier about the fruit maybe being that, or anyway, you guys were talking about that, and it reminded me of every time I've played mini golf. You get to like the last hole, and if you miss it, you lose your ball, right? And it goes down this one hole or whatever. And it's like the pride that I can make it in one shot, right? And then so I think when you think about the fact that maybe we were created by something and we were given free will, we had to be beta tested in some way, right? And so I think that maybe there was this loophole at the end to catch like programming error, and because I kind of think of it too, like, oh, okay, so the commandments and these laws, these are like programming code put in. And we even get into like so what happened with the serpent and Eve? Well, was God using Python? And so and it's funny too, because in encryption, when I was involved with Cicada, there actually the man in the middle attack does involve Alice, Bob, and Eve, and and here the serpent was given root access, right, to the programming essentially, and so it was able to affect the matrix because the matrix is the womb, and so the serpent seed kind of goes all the way back to that. Just blew my mind, dude. Anyway, so I kind of think of it like that in terms of the laws themselves have like a numerical value. And this is why gematria is so important, because like in video games, for instance, you can cause glitches to occur if your movements and actions equal the same mathematical value as thus it will have an effect. Like you can glitch through planes, and so there's like siddhis about like folding up the earth and traveling far distances and things like that. And it's like, well, that's a lot like clipping in a video game. So like, are they moving their feet in like a certain sequence and then like saying or doing something and all of a sudden they zoom forward, Anyway, that was just a passing thought I had about those sorts of things. But I had another thought too, but it slipped my mind. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much, Joshua. Please, Solar, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, if anyone happens to be like listening to this in the future, even if you're aware of a system of like clipholytic working, like path working and stuff like that, that isn't just basically a reskinned version of like normal like Kabbalistic path working, like please let me know. I don't mean this in like some like machismo like gauntlet challenge, like show me where you're actually doing something new, but like legitimately, I've looked into a lot of these like different systems. There are people who are primarily involved, like their main activity, like and form of income seems to be from like writing books about like clipholytic like pathworkings and stuff. And I've yet to really see anything that's like substantially different from what we might call like light side pathworking. It's basically just like, oh, so you want to do like the unfortunate like hermetic kind of contemporary like Kabbalah stuff, but you're looking for like big titty goth GF or like black metal vampire boyfriend at the same time. So it's like, okay, like if that appeals to you, like that's honestly kind of cool. I'm not like, that doesn't necessarily like speak to me, but if that's the thing that like gets you actually like trying stuff and sitting in meditation or whatever, I guess go for it. But I'm saying that under the premise that it's basically just reskinned like normal path working. But if you're aware of someone who's doing something like genuinely new, like please let me know. Like I would love to be shown, to be incorrect on this point. I'm legitimately curious.
I 100% agree. 100% agree with that. Have not really found anything that interesting, other than it is interesting for me, who like prefers obviously the light tree, we'll call it. I do find it somewhat interesting in that sense, is like you kind of get a sense of the klipas a little more acutely, maybe. Like you kind of see, like, but it all makes sense. It's all confirmed through maybe my Sephirotic experiences. So maybe it doesn't really matter, is what maybe my original premise was. Yeah, it doesn't really matter, but there is something interesting about it, I think, as a conceptual exercise. But I totally agree. It literally, you will have the same realizations, you'll have the same experiences, you'll have the same feelings. Yeah, just like the aesthetic is different, right? Aesthetic is a kind of supernatural violence. Yes, Solar, please go ahead.
Yeah, seriously. I just want to say, like, okay, replace like the, what is it in one system that I don't want to shout anyone out in a negative way, but like the venom of Hecate, like replace that with the sword of Manjushri, and like, wow, you're suddenly on the light side, or you're suddenly doing like, dharmic work. It's like, it's literally the same, like basically, not, I mean, not word for word, right? But you get the idea. Like it's basically 1-to-1, like to a comical degree, which again is fine, because ultimately, as I see it, you're bringing knowledge that can be legitimate and helpful and uplifting and enriching to more people who maybe wouldn't gravitate towards, the sort of Manjushri or whatever. But like, come on, guys.
Manjushri is fucking awesome. Everybody should aspire to Yamataka practice, I think. Or just an orange Manjushri or black Manjushri. I don't know any black Manjushri practices. I'm just saying, I of course I know the orange one. I'm sorry, Matt, please go ahead. But yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree, Solar. It's just the experiences will be so similar. And honestly, the pagan layer, I know I'm a long-standing like pagan critic, but this is not a criticism of that. This is a criticism of like how they arrange that kind of tree of death. It's too pagan. There's a much neater way you could do it, and through the Mahavidyas you could also map the exact same thing in a much older, much more kind of like time tested methodological, like, I'm not saying you have to do tantra, but there's just a conceptual thinking that that tree could also give you. So you have options, and I think making it overly like, everybody loves fucking Hecate, and like the other one, I won't say his name because Solar already brought it up today. So, but Hecate, that's fine, but come on, guys, like it's 2025. Like, fucking get on Manjushri. That's the shit. It's Manjushri. Okay, Matt. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of those like Lilith or Hecate or whatever. First of all, like everybody, not just them specifically, people don't know what they worship, what they do most of the times. Like if you ask them to name the stuff or to go to the origins, they don't know. So it's very bullshit in that sense. If you just do that for yourself, you're gonna have much better results. But anyways, about the Cliffas, to be completely transparent here, I didn't go deep into them yet, like the specific path workings and so on. But if we go to the idea that Jin already brought, that there's not an actual tree of death, it's just like the husks, the shadow of the thing. There, to my understanding, the paths would be using the energy of the normal paths or the normal spheres, but in a quote unquote destructive way, in a quote unquote death way. So let's say you get the qualities of hot, but you use that to lie. You use that to lie your way into politics. You use that to lie your way into, big corps or whatever. So then again, it's like you have the skill that hot has, but you're just using it in a different way, in a way that in long term will bring you more harm or death than, and not the good death that we have in the one of the paths, but let's say the bad death, the one that doesn't bring cool stuff. So in a way, it's like, if that's how it is, then why the fuck would I even work it? It's like, sure, let me understand it, to understand how the word works. Let me understand how people use it. How, let's say, money Twitter uses this fucking clippers to get money for themselves. But then I understand as well how they bring their own downfall. Because it's like, let's say you start small, start just you're not a drug trafficker. You're just doing some stuff here and there, just helping some friends and so on. Eventually, if you get into that more and more and more, and you become the top dog guy, it's like there's no going out, you know, because it's like everyone's after you, and the guys who are not after you, they're chasing your head because they want to be the top dogs, and it's also hurt. So it's not a sustainable way of living, let's say. And I just used one example, but you have many others, right? I don't like talking about those, because that's, I think, why even they didn't name the 72 quote unquote demons, because you have the Goetian ones, but I would say the Goetian ones they're more closely related to humans, as in they're like dense as humans, but they're not qliphothic, really. Because if they were, it's like, imagine just having that near you, you would fucking, everything would die around you. So yeah, that's why I don't like even like naming the kind of things that specific qlipha might be related to. But yeah, that's the overall idea that I remembered.
So, Matt, I just want to say that's skillful. That's skill. What Matt just said was that's skillfulness. That's upaya. So, however you want to describe that, if you want to say, "Oh, that's not because Matt's not a Buddhist," it doesn't matter. That's still skillful. That's just what it is. It's like you don't try and put like the negative seeds in the world, and speaking them does produce them. So, yeah, naming things does have power over them. So I think there's a time and a place where definitely we discuss these exact. Maybe we go a little more in depth on this. But I think like for people to hear that, like you don't need, like if you don't need it, it might just be something that you like acknowledge. Like maybe you study it, maybe you don't. And I agree with Solar. Like if that's what you're first attracted to, if, like, you know, I was a little like I joked to Patrick the other day. I was like, yeah, I'm just like a little like I'm still that weeby like sad boy from like when I was 17. Like still the same person, like still wears black, but I'm not really the same person. I'm like very different actually, like very very different. So, but there is part of me that is maybe like a little bit of me that's still there, like a spark. So I just think that if it draws you in and that's what you use as your initial, if that's what plants a seed in you to go higher, and you can only go higher on the tree, like on the tree of knowledge. And as Matt said, someone did have quite a viral tweet on that the other day. I just want to say, but no, it was really well said, Matt. But yeah, the sin knowledge is not the cause of sin. Okay, it's very simple. It's a Kabbalistic truth. Knowledge is not the cause of sin, but it's up to how you interact with it, your perception, your thought, your speech, your action, all that. That's what makes things into sins. So, I think it's like I think we've done something interesting. I'm just gonna say this right now. I'm sorry, Joshua, but I think we've done something interesting is that we've put out like a body of work as a group that has discussed this, but is not really shied away from like the more antinomian material. Just think that's kind of interesting that we've embraced kind of both, and we're not even running away from there might be even parapolitical implications to engaging with some of the material. Okay, so what? Still don't want to read it. I want to read it all for myself. I want to discern, and I like doing it as a group. So yeah, anyways, okay, so Joshua, please go ahead. Oh, I want to do sorry, Joshua, shout outs. Thaddeus Maximus, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Every time we see you in the rejects chat, every time we see you here, makes me really happy. Of course, we have Mookie, Crow Dakini, beloved from our group. Thank you so much. We have Rosa and we have Dane, and yeah, we appreciate it because it doesn't happen without, you know. It's like it's a Gonzo space. We're riffing on Kabbalah and mysteries of you know, the secret mysteries that really on a space on a Saturday night. So Joshua, please go ahead.
What you said about knowledge and sin, I think you're correct, because it was actually something more like wanting to be God or like God. It wasn't. It was more particular, I think, right? So, what kind of knowledge is that, right? And it reminds me of that phrase, "Heavy is the head that wears the crown." It's like, well, you want the crown, wear it for a day. see how tired you are at the end of the day, right? And indeed, your head would be heavy with all the cares that God has to provide for. And I think that's what's so interesting is in the garden, we had all of our needs provided for us and we didn't have to do any work or labor. And so I think in the end days, it's like we kind of see and maybe appreciate the work that was done to maintain that. And how we've been desperately trying to get back to some type of utopia type thing scenario. I used to keep terrariums, and so it helped me kind of connect back to that aspect of like, well, was the Garden of Eden like a closed environment or like a terrarium, and all the hoses and pumps and all the things I had to like put to this tank to keep it alive and vibrant and thriving. And then it made me think one day, like, what would these critters in here have to do to piss me off so bad that I would just walk away? And that's kind of like the state we found ourselves in now. And it's like, because sometimes I have had them get out and it does upset me and worry me. And so I don't have them anymore. But anyway, and just keeping them like that and what happened in the garden and all that, it just kind of made me wonder. It's like, well, they thought they could be the terrarium keeper. Well, all right, buddy, here's the keys, you know?
Well, here I'll say this. I don't really have a response to the about terrariums or anything, but I do. It's interesting about what you said about the garden and how everything was provided for us because it kind of brings in what Solar had mentioned, like a parapolitical layer. Like we don't want to live in the longhouse. I don't want to live in the longhouse. I love women, totally fine. I don't have mommy or daddy issues. In fact, it doesn't mean I have a perfect relationship with my parents. It's just I don't. But I don't really have those issues, so I don't have those issues theologically either. So uh, I- I'm not a candidate to like go full on antinomian because I never really found mainstream religion like I didn't feel oppressed. I didn't. It didn't bother me. It just didn't do anything for me. That's all. So I think I was looking. I was kind of like is like a, it was like Daria, but she's touching the live wire for the first time. Not that I'm a Daria, but I'm just saying it was kind of like that's how I found it. Like just very blasé, just like kind of lame, kind of boring, and I could see there was something though because I was like a very mad. Like, I live in that imaginal space. Especially as a kid. So I could see it. Like I would imagine like when they would do mass and I would see like like the bishop guy, and he would walk down with his like they had this huge mid-century like bronze crucifix, and I would always be like, yeah, I would use that to like slay all the vampires. That's what the first like tool I'm gonna steal. But anyways, what my point in bringing that up is that I think we look for the keys. Isn't that what it's about? We don't want to live in the longhouse. Okay, so that's like the longhouse is kind of Mormon, is what I sort of realized when I was talking with JJ yesterday. I mean, it's not all Mormons obviously are like stuck in the Merkaba of the mother, but yeah, part of their ideology is like that. And I don't want to be there, but I also don't want to be in like the rigidity of like the totalizing institutional father either. That is neither is appealing, to be honest. Which I don't know. So I think that I like that middle pillar approach. I think that's a good way to be. Like you can slay the vampires. This is a very tantra thing. You can slay the vampires as they arise, but you don't necessarily go looking for them. And so, I mean, that's kind of what I think. That's kind of what I think, Joshua, is just like, where do you want to be on the tree? Like, do you want to live in the garden where everything's just provided for you and we don't know anything? Sure, okay. Let's all throw our phones away. Let's do it right now. Is everyone going to do it at the same time? That sounds great. I'll go throw mine in the ocean right now. But the reality is, we're not going to do that. Well, maybe if we individually choose to, yes, sure. But are we collectively really going to throw our phones away? Like, I'm just not seeing it happen. Maybe the manufacturing just keeps degrading because it's gotten worse. I mean, I think it's gotten worse. Like the longevity of things has gotten worse. So maybe it won't last. Maybe it'll last like another 20 years, whatever. Then we'll go back to like a pre-smartphone kind of technology. Maybe not. Maybe we'll be like AI futurists, like all plugged in. I don't know, like what do they call themselves? Cyber Gnostic. You know what? I don't know. I'm not saying that I believe it. I don't believe that. I'm just saying that I'm very. I told you, you guys know. I'm Ann of the Daughter. I'm all the way. I'm all the way in. No takebacks for that. Okay, Joshua, Matt. I think that's the order.
I'll be brief. I just thought it was ironic because as you were saying that, I looked and I was like, wow, I'm talking on an Apple smartphone and it's got a bite out of it, dude. So it's making a reference, even though it was a fig. Most people think of it as an apple. But I just thought that was kind of ironic.
Well, an apple is in the rose family. So just thought I'd say that. Okay, Matt, please go ahead.
Yeah, and even if it wasn't, it's already on people's minds. So anyways, it reminds you of the symbol, right? But as we're talking about like how we can evolve from here, I'd say from my perspective, like working on tech and so on, it's like either the infrastructure continues to exist and it's just going to get more and more, like more usage of technology. I think eventually it the great breakthrough will be like bridging with organic life, because like right now we are kind of in this in between where we are cyborgs because we live with our phones like 99% of the times, but at the same time, if I want today, I can just smash my phone and fucking go to the woods, and it doesn't exist anymore, right? Then it's just the frequencies that 4G, whatever, it's around me. But it's like either that or somehow the infrastructure ends, and then sure we go back to monkey. I don't think there's an in between because the way it's just we get more dependent. It's kind of like the more you eat, the more hungry you get. The more money you get, the more money you want. The more things you have, the more you want of it. It's not the other way. It's not like you never get satisfied, basically, at least in this dimension. So I don't know. To me, it would be very interesting because the thing is also all the technology we create, like what we're doing right now, right? We are all talking to each other and we are fucking kilometers apart, time zones apart, and so on and so forth. There's going to be people listening to this afterwards. So kind of some time travel shenanigans happening. We are already doing it just with the help of like tech. That it's like some, at the end of the day, it's like some crystals, some metals, and so on. And we, in theory, if everyone was a avid telepathy practitioner, we could do this as well. Like if we all projected into someplace, even the time stuff, right? We could project into a specific zone and then talk to each other and so on and so on. But it would just take much more practice to do it. It's just that now more people can do these kind of things. But in the same way, I don't know, it's kind of like this adaptation. So having to adapt with the new things that come or the stuff that goes away. So like say if nowadays telephones went away, how different would you live your life? Like I definitely would fucking start practicing telepathy more just because it's like you get accustomed to it. It's like now you want to keep doing this kind of stuff. So I don't know, we cannot say 100% how the future is going to be, but I'll say it definitely from here things wouldn't let's say they would have to keep going similar to how they're going, but they can change how we do it, how we approach it, right? So let's say if infrastructure goes away, we'd have to find different ways of let's say feeding that need, because now it's there, you cannot go back basically.
We absolutely can't go back. Like I won't be able to go back. I need like it's not even about like the human connection so much. Honestly, I'm not even kidding. It's not about like I know I treat Twitter like my kind of I think my fitness feelings called it like what did he say? It was like a 2004. It was really cutting. It was really bitchy. He said it was like a 2004 I don't know, like one of the live journal. He called it a live journal, like an Asian emo girl's live journal. And like, okay, fine, like that's what it is. But like that's what your fucking timeline should be. Like it's exactly like what Matt said. Like there's a chronopoetic element to your timeline. Like you get to choose what's on it. Just I mean maybe not your timeline. I mean it's pretty shit, but what you post, that's totally up to you. What you repost, that's within your will. So I think that's really interesting too. And like the words you use, that's your fucking choice.
It's called a thread, after all.
That's right. That's right. So what Joshua just said, like that, this is like where you can weave like what narratives you want. That's why it's a perfect like gonzo experimentation. That's why I don't mind. Do you know how terrified I used to be? Like even a few months ago, if someone would read one of my anything I wrote, I would have like died. Like yeah, of course I wrote interesting tweets way before that, but I'm saying in a broader way, like I would never explicitly maybe write a poem or write a story. Like I would just not do that. I would like kind of say it in a clever, smart assy way, but a little different. But now I don't care. Like I just throw it out there. People might like it. If they don't, fuck it. It doesn't matter. I wrote something. I did a little writing exercise, a little creative, lived in the imaginal. Like what is fucking Twitter if not, as I've said, the Ketu of the Yuga? It's the software of the smoke. So like let's play with it. Like let's like people take it so seriously, but I think we should. But there's also an element like you have to it's Lolita, not Lolita, Lalita, right? It's like Tripura Sundari. It's like we play with reality. We don't have to be fixed by it. Yes, Solar, please go ahead.
Just kind of a little mundane observation. I don't know. I find like your social media experience can be an incredibly revealing, what do we call it, like a black mirror. Like with Barden, you have your like your light mirror, your black mirror, and the black mirror is where you list all of your inadequacies, your failings, your insecurities, right? So we always, I don't know, we engage in these fantasies, right? Like, well, if I had all the power, all the agency, all the control in the world, like I would remake it in my image, I would do this and that grandiose thing, and I would have all these effects, right? Well, social media is like a simulated world in which you basically have all of the control over what shows up there. Like, yeah, I guess you'll see like an Elon Musk tweet if you go to Twitter not logged in, but like your timeline, yeah, you don't control the other people posting directly, but like you basically control whether you see them or not, right? And then of course you control all the content you put out there. And so like and this is as true for me as it is for everyone else, right? But you can ask like, okay, are there any people who you're like, I don't really think this person is that smart or that interesting, but like they're kind of important in the scene or like for some other reason. So like, oh, I'll follow them and like I'll interact with them, right? Like I think what you realize is that even in this tiny little world, which is a simulacra of the real world, you have seeded your own power. Like there was for nothing, for literally nothing, right? Like I'm not saying, in the real world we have like real needs, real contingencies and concerns. Like yeah, you probably shouldn't just like walk away from your professional career and go like live in the woods on a whim, right? Like other people might depend on you and all these things. But like social media doesn't matter at all. And yet even in that world, like most people, myself included to some extent, are just slaves, And like that can be a real, I don't know, like social media at the same time can be an arena for you to start asserting like agency and will and start to like understand what processes are live and at work in your own mind in an area where you do have like 100% control, right? And then you can build that up and take that elsewhere.
Oh, that was amazing. That was like brilliant, honestly, so insightful. I So Solar brought up something last week. It was that about we were talking about like Temple set, the crystal tablets. We were talking about the onyx tablets. I don't know if we talked about this on the space, but we were mentioning it, and he was like, "Isn't it full of rules and regulations?" And I was like, "Yeah, it is full of rules and regulations." But I didn't read it as that. Honestly, when I first read it, I was like, this is like Klippa shit. Like this is like because he knows that's what Lurius said is that if you bring Kabbalah into the bureaucracy, you create a Klippa. He knew very much what he was doing. Because if you read like deep into it, it's like all these complications. He complicates the path for people to like move to speak against other people. It's very magical. And so when I initially read it, I was like, oh, he's just talking about Klippa shit. I didn't even click for me that there was like a literal layer. So I think that but so why am I bringing this up? Because it's like the Onyx tablet, right? It's like, yeah, we are deep in the Klippa right now. So like And I agree, Solar. Like, I follow way too many people personally that I've never interacted with, that I don't even think have ever interacted with me. And for what? It doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter. And maybe that is the complication. Maybe that's like the fractalization of the Onyx tablet. It's like all these networks that don't really matter. I don't know. Just a thought. Okay, sorry, Matt. Please go ahead.
Yeah, as Solar was speaking, I got reminded of two things. So first of all, completely agree. Like you are the sole agent of your timeline. Obviously, even if you use the for you or the ones the algorithm works, like the algorithm is learning from you, right? So it's like there has been countless times where I needed something specific, and it literally just it was granted to me by the algorithm god, let's say. Like literally the thing just appears. It can be like a specific tool software, it could be like a specific knowledge, whatever it is, like book, whatever, really. But that can only happen first if you are aware of what you need, because if you're not, then well, the thing can be at your like in your face and you're not seeing it. So you got to be aware. And then second, you gotta manage it. You gotta, let's say if you like something, then you know, okay, this is gonna appear more in my timeline. If I follow someone, it's gonna appear more in my timeline. If I click on I didn't like the shit, or you block the person, again, you stop seeing that. You mute the stuff, you stop seeing it. And knowing where to go as well, because if let's say I go on TikTok, it's a totally different simulacra, like Solar said, than if I go on Twitter, than if I go on Facebook, than if I go on like any software, right? Each one of those is going to be its own word, basically. And you got to know what's in that word that if what you're looking for can be there or not. That also correlates a little bit with what if you want to use this word to advance your material life, which is also like what people are doing nowadays. It's basically you can use this virtual thing to reach out to people that you would never be able to reach out to if there wasn't for this environment. Like if you were a fucking, if you were selling eggs in your city, like you would be able to reach as many people as you have power to reach. Like let's say in your city or maybe like your region or whatever. But then now with the internet, you can reach out to places that are far beyond places you would ever be able to reach, and you have this in like the power of your hands. It's literally no, there's nothing stopping you from doing that, really. Not only in terms of material, like if you want to sell something, but if you want to show your art, if you want to show something to the world, right, you have much more power now to talk about stuff. And another thing, which is slightly related to Jin's idea of Aeon of the Daughter, which is if we take the 4 astrological ages, like we can divide them in 4. So we are always going to have 2 physical ones where we build a different word physically, and then 2 digital ones where we build another word digitally. So the last, like we are in quote unquote one of the last cycle of 4. So we had, for example, the first one Taurus, then Aries. So those were 2, let's say, analogical ones, physical ones. And then we had Pisces, and now we are starting Aquarius. Like, let's say, starting right now or starting a couple of years ago, it doesn't really matter. It's just the idea. It's around 2,000 years. And then you're going to have at the end of the age of Aquarius a new virtual world. Like you can already see that happening. Like just look at how, if you take the current technology, you have like AI and VR and robotics and a bunch of this kind of stuff. When they get slightly better and they correlate to each other, there's going to be no difference. Like you're not going to be able to tell if you're in a fucking VR headset living in a digital world and if you're living in a normal world. Like in Brazil already, there is basically no one using paper as money, nobody using like anything really physical to buy. It's all digital, it's all numbers on the screen. So it's like you're already getting prepared for this kind of stuff. Like again, communications, people are always talking digitally most of the times. Like if you think like work related or like even family related, whatever it is, and then it's just gonna keep going that path if we keep the infrastructure right. But so yeah, you have this completely different world that we are creating here in real time, and you have now the power to do it. And that's why if you get better at what we all talk about here in the spaces, like the symbology of stuff, Kabbalah, Tantra, whatever it is you want to call it, then you get more power in this new world, because it's all symbolic. Like, you can only bring a message forward if you know how to trigger specific emotions, specific thoughts into people, and you do all this first with symbols. That's what we are like basically learning here at the end of the day.
So I have to say that I almost swooned, Matt, when you were like Jin's Aeon of the Daughters. Like, I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, I did that. I did do that. It's fucking cool. We all did that. Like, legit, like many people in this room did that. So it's pretty fucking cool. I think anyway. Okay, so yeah, I totally agree, Matt. It is a world of symbols. Like, like all of this, I feel like we've just been prepped to live in this world, like this like mid-tier to like early millennials to like obviously Zoomers, and maybe not Gen Alpha. I'm not quite sure of them yet, but I think a lot of us have been prepped through video games, through like popular culture, but even through like academic things. Like, I sat in Marshall McLuhan's actual office at Ennis College, and it was just like, it used to be like, I was like, wow. And I was like, he became a Catholic, like, look at him. And I didn't like think of anything metaphysical really. I could see that there was something there, but I wasn't quite sure what I was looking at. And then now I look at it and I'm like, whoa, I actually kind of understand he's talking about like Kabbalah. Well, obviously I think everything is like Kabbalah, but he is talking about Kabbalah. I'm just say he really is. So he uses all the right words. It's like, it's very good. So I just think it's crazy to like really come full circle. And yeah, it's 100%. We are the builders. That's why it's kind of cool to be like a conceptual Mason in a way, like in just like in the thought experiment of the online space. Like, I had a episode with Bicky on Tomb Raider, and I didn't really know what my show was going to be about at that point. It was my 4th episode. I kind of did, but I kind of did. Like, looking back, I was like, what attracted me to Tomb Raider that I thought I could do an episode with Bicky on? And it was like, actually, it makes sense, because in the episode we actually talked about like spatial relationships, and how like you kind of have to move through space in particular ways as Lara. I'm saying it in the correct British way, at least attempting. And so that, I mean, that's what it is. It's like everything is like how we move through space. I know everybody's like tired of hearing this as like the leftoid of the leftoid, like activists kind of speak, but it's actually true. And I even remember thinking about it. I was like, yeah, it's so bullshit that these people are saying it, but actually, this is actually a true statement that they're making. It's like, how do you move through space? Well, this is like a very common, like, magical paradox question. Like, how do you move through space? What is the relationship with you and time? What is the relationship between space and time? And all the, yeah, I mean, it's but it gets really deep, because it gets back to these like fundamental questions of like, where is God on the tree? Like, what is he doing there? And like, how does he manifest? And like, what is the inevitable conclusion if we worship like the face at this the Sephra, okay, or this name is a little better, but we'll just say face, because I know everybody, obviously Solar brought up a book about faces, and also Joseph Campbell's book of 1,000 Faces, which I know Joshua loves. Okay, sorry, Joshua, please go ahead.
I won't go long about Tomb Raider, but I haven't really played the franchise very much, but I know that it spawned also some movies and stuff. Well, some of the lore that you get through the movies is that she was actually raised as a boy, basically by her dad, who was like an archaeologist or whatever. And so I think it's in that one where she goes back in time with some type of artifact. But anyway, so there's like, you kind of referenced some relationship there with spatial, but I think there's also like chronological, because I tend to think of the daughter as Saturn's favored daughter or whatever, which sometimes is also Venus, I think, in some cases. But it reminds me of the Masonic depiction of Saturn counting the ringlets of Virgo's hair. But anyway, I kind of view her in that relationship there because she's also always depicted with guns, which is she's throwing lead, which is Saturn, right? So, but yeah, she's always going into the underworld in a lot of cases, finding artifacts, secrets, tutelary spirit type stuff where she's getting all these revelations with some guidance and so on and so forth, but also a little bit of ancestor. Not necessarily ancestor worship, but veneration. So I could be wrong, but maybe that's Netzach, like carrying on the family name or the fame or tradition or whatever it might be.
That was great, Joshua. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, that's what and that's what. Sorry, I didn't make that point very clear. Is that is sort of what I was getting at in the episode. Is that I think we were really talking about like the metaphysics of like the online worlds, but we were just using like particulars of the lens of Tomb Raider. And I think one thing is that in my opinion, the daughter is really at the 9 is really like the Babylon at Yesod, but she can also appear at Tiferet. But this is like a much longer discussion. That is neither here nor there. But yeah, I think well, I'm gonna let Matt go, and I'll kind of Rom. We just got Rom in, so now we have our full lodge. Great. Okay. Hey, buddy. Thanks for getting up early on Sunday. I think it's Sunday. Is it Sunday there? Yeah, I think so. Or is it late? No, it's morning. Okay, Matt, please go ahead.
Hey, Ram. So actually, talking still about Tomb Raider, but in a different way. Tadeusz made a question here on the post. He says, I've been checking out different interviews from magicians regarding what paths of ceremonial magic to follow and what angels to call upon, best suited for you and so on. And one guy mentioned stay within the framework you grew up with. So he gave an example of like he has some Irish descendant, so it would maybe for him make more sense to get into like Irish folk magic instead of going to the Christian archangels stuff. And why I'm bringing that up right now specifically, because to me, it's like this. If you go back to the symbols being the power and you grow up with specific symbols, guess what? Those are going to have more power into you. So since we're talking about Tomb Raider, for example, if you're someone that grew up playing games and watching anime and whatever, you already have a bunch of magic that you can use, which is literally the magic or whatever that the anime and the games showed you. Like if you played Mortal Kombat, you can use scorpions, like get over here if you want to use that as a fucking attraction spell. You know what I mean? Like you literally you can just use that. The word works like this. There's no when we talk about like Jin gave the example of not getting strict to the rules. That's it. At the end of the day, you can just use this kind of stuff. So if it makes your left brain not interfere with the process because you're already accustomed to the symbol, perfect, go with that. If you want to try out a different symbol, that also works. For example, if you want to use music as a way to program yourself, it definitely will work better if it's a music that you don't understand the lyrics, like it's in a foreign language or whatever, because again, your left brain doesn't get into play, which it is not the one creating the symbols. Your right brain creates the symbol, the left brain processes them. But if you are listening, let's say, to some song in fucking ancient Hungarian or whatever, if that even exists, and you don't understand anything of it, it's just getting installed. It's just getting installed. So you can leverage that, right? You can leverage that idea of using something that you don't quite understand. Let's say you can get some very foreign culture and work with that, which can be tricky because again, if you don't quite understand, then you could enter into something there. But at the end of the day, you can also go quote unquote the safe route and work with what you already understand, what you're already accustomed with, which will work well nonetheless. Because again, you already know it. You can feel safer. Like for example, one of the first, I think the first time I went to an ayahuasca ritual, the experience that I had was very Christian coded because, well, that was the symbols that I had in my mind. So like at some point I was thinking Jesus or whatever, and like supposedly God or whatever. But then it's like, okay, those are the symbols. I can accept them, right? Because those are the symbols that I was born with. It doesn't mean that if somebody else took ayahuasca, they would have the same symbols. That's fine. And I can decide either to continue working with that or not. Or like, okay, I found some other symbols that don't want to work with them as well. But just know to like try to understand what you're doing for doing some kind of theurgic or like a ceremonial magic. just so you don't use some random, astral server from some other guy. You're just not wasting your energy. Let's say, just try to understand a little bit more about them beforehand. But yeah, I would say going with your like your base, it's a good thing. I don't know what the boys think.
Oh, thank you so much, Matt. I'm gonna let Solar go, but I do have a really interesting piece of Jin lore when he is done, and I've never even spoken about it, so it'll be funny, I think. And I'll wait till obviously Solar's done.
Oh wow. Well, in that case, I'll try to get off the stage as quickly as possible. Yeah. So, and I mentioned this specifically because you bring up the Celtic or Irish background. Also, hello, fellow Mick. At least partially, right? So it's funny. Jin and I were talking about some different systems today when we were recording for the pod, and I brought up sort of Druidism or like indigenous Celtic practice, almost specifically as the prototypical example of a lost tradition. And I'm not trying to discourage you from doing that. If you're interested, if you see like Ogam runes, I think I'm pronouncing that ish correctly. It's a weird, but yeah, the runes, right? If you see those and you're like, man, that is what I want to do pulls from, and you're reading the few epics that we have extant, and you're like, man, this really speaks to me. It's in the blood. It's working for you, then those are all like totally good signs, right? Like, and in general, you should do what you're drawn towards. And like what Matt said, like the sort of symbolic map that you're already familiar with. Though I unfortunately, this is a great tragedy, is that the Celtic tradition or Celtic traditions have suffered probably more than any other major strain of traditional indigenous European belief, right? Just from the ravages of time, persecution, etc. And so I guess I would just like, as a word of caution, just really make sure that there's going to be enough meat on the bones there for you to get done what you're trying to do. And it's going to be enough of a system where you're going to actually be able to develop and feel like you're making progress, whatever your personal goals are for that, without having to bend over into other systems. Like I feel like I may be engaged in something similar, specifically in the Northwest continental tradition, i.e., like the Norse tradition of paganism, which comparatively has a much, much richer textual history, right? It just much more has survived. Okay. So I was already in a much better position than you would be for coming at it from a Celtic direction. And I still felt like I was having to go back to the Vedic sources, go back into just generally Dharmic stuff. Like I was just poaching more and more and more from Dharmic sources as I went further along, just because, again, I had some pieces of lore, but I had absolutely no guidance regarding actual praxis, right? Regarding actual techniques that were used by any of these people. It was all just winging it. And at the end of the day, I wasn't willing to put my progress or development at risk for getting stuff wrong myself. Not that I'm not willing to take any risk onto myself or any like expectation of discernment, but for me, I would much rather be able to work within a system that I know can produce results in people, right? So that would just be like before I committed, if I were in your situation, I'd just look at my sources, my primary sources and my secondary sources, and maybe look at what organizations I would have access to within that tradition, like, and see what they're doing, see if they're actually posting results that feel compelling to you, and then go from there, right? And again, I guess final thing is maybe stay flexible, right? So I know guys who were interested in like druidic reconstruction, but in their mind they're like, oh, the Druids were actually students of Pythagoras, and so da 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 da, and they use that as these sort of mythopoetic connections, right? That maybe are real, but maybe not, like whatever, but they're real enough in the minds of these practitioners and these magicians to enable them to connect in a legitimate way with these other traditions, with these other schools, right? And so they sort of create these little tunnels in their minds that give them access to stuff in which they would otherwise be deficient. So, just maybe keep yourself open to that as needed, right? And if you find that you don't have that flexibility, well, then maybe a super limited school isn't optimal for you. But you do you. I wish you the best.
I know that Joshua has his hand up, so technically I should just let him go ahead. But I will say, because I saw the question was from, I believe, Thaddeus. So I thank you, Solar, so much. That was really great. You answered like a whole layer that I couldn't even touch. But I think you really well articulated all my concerns as well. So yeah, my recommendation is like, I agree with Matt. Like the symbols you grew up with, that's going to probably be the most potent things. If you didn't grow up with like a particular religious framework, look at the things you're attracted to, like in terms of pop culture, not contemporary pop culture, but like I think you're a millennial like me, or like around our same age as Solar and I. So, yeah, look at the things that like you that stuck with you, that you carried with you through time and space, and then read a Peter Carroll book. That could also be something interesting. I'm just saying. I'm not saying be a chaos magician, but I'm just, I'm putting it out there. That's a very millennial kind of coded literature. I think it like a wisdom literature in a way. It's not like super grown up. It's not like super, but it's very conceptual. It's kind of like Burroughs. It's kind of like fucked up, and it's like perfect for us. So that's my recommendation. But please, Matt, go, or Joshua. Sorry, Joshua. Please go ahead.
I was just going to say that what Solar was talking about kind of reminded me of how Christianity itself has all these different denominations that it's split off into. And yet the root, which is Judaism, is often kind of neglected or overlooked. But there can be a lot of insights gathered about because they, oftentimes refer to mystery in the modern day Christianity. And it's like, well, the mystery is revealed if you study the Old Testament, because Christ was foreshadowed and fulfilled it. But when you separate the traditions and there's no bridge, it creates like a disconnect. And I think that when they're kind of describing it as a scion, or that the Christians were grafted on to the tree, I see it as that sort of thing where you got a new branch added to a tradition that's actually based on certain teachings. But the branch might also bear different fruit. It might be somewhat disconnected from the root, but there's going to be traces of it still there, right? If you know what you're looking at, right? So I guess if you enter into horticulture and grafting trees and stuff, this sort of thing might make sense. But anyway, that's just kind of the point I wanted to make there.
So this is the thing, and that was great, Joshua, and I totally agree. I hope that the like all three of us, or four of us co-hosts agree. Well, I hope you guys agree with what I'm going to say. Is that I think that there are like Kabbalah is the map. The map's not the territories. Matt, obviously, it's from a famous saying, but Matt has said it before in spaces, so shout out to him. But there are valid ways to climb it through through esoteric Judaism. There are valid ways to climb it through esoteric Christianity. There are valid ways, even, yes, you're going to hear something you've never heard me say before. There is even, perhaps, a valid way to at least climb to a layer with Islam, with certain kinds, okay? I think that Christian Kabbalah is a great innovation. This is just my opinion. This is just strictly my opinion. I'm not making like a ground pronouncement. I'm not like some great Kabbalah sage that'll be remembered in 100 years, whatever. That's not the truth. But I am rather good at it. So take it for what it's worth. I think Christian Kabbalah is a great innovation. I think it really makes a lot of sense to me. I'm just telling you guys, like, you prepare the heart in Tiferet, then you go up to death, then you like receive the pink ray, the clear light of the Holy Spirit. That makes a lot of sense to me. So I don't know, forge yourself in the fire and the water, have a strong foundation. It's for the honor and the glory, right? It's like the Hesed and the Hod. And of course we have the splendor of the mother. What is she but like the fortress, like the city, like the Babylon that we stand upon, the country, the kingdom? Those are all interrelated, obviously. Sometimes it's about context and interrelationship between the paths. So in just my opinion, Christian Kabbalah is a beautiful and phenomenal innovation, kind of, maybe tantric, you could say, layer on Kabbalah. That doesn't make the Judaic Kabbalah worse. I don't think that. I just think the Christian Kabbalah is really an interesting, like very, it seems like very different than what came before in some ways. Okay, yes, I'm sorry, Joshua. Please go ahead.
I think you actually helped me articulate my thought better. I think what I was really trying to say was that what we have is the practice of modern day Christianity is as if the chesed or kindness branch of the separo has been graphed. Like but yet it's so disconnected from all the other separo, including the roots. And so I think that's why some people today struggle. Again, I'm talking through my lens of modern day Christianity, but even my experience in the Orthodox Church was this way, where people had a very limited understanding past chesed. It's like they were really kind and all that, but at the same time, they relied heavily on somebody else's interpretation of the word and didn't seek it on their own necessarily. They were always dependent on the priest and so on and so forth. And so I wonder, like, is there a Gnostic element there too of when you seek on your own? And they would call that being your own pope or whatever. And it was discouraged as like sola scriptura and stuff like that. So I find it interesting, kind of like how that branch is mostly dependent on chesed, but also discourages going outside that. And I don't know, it's just kind of an observation.
Well, Hesed is kind of a longhousey. It's not. That's actually the wrong kind of framing, but has a longhousey element. Yes, Solar. I'm sorry. Please go. I know you want to say because especially about the self-initiation thing.
Yeah, no. And actually, I was trying to. I don't want to duplicate stuff, even if the episode isn't going to come out for like months. Like, I still feel bad about like rehashing material, so I'm not going to hit that super hard. I actually just wanted to kind of address more the sort of social question or dynamic of it. So because you brought up Christian Kabbalah, right? And I think that like because the question was asked specifically with respect to ceremonial magic, my question is more like, why not just try to become a good ceremonial magician and try to click up with a group, maybe one of many that's kind of descendant from the late 19th, early 20th century kind of boom of ceremonial magic in the West, right? Like, and with that, you can do that. I think. I mean, yes, they are sort of at one level, they're rooted in these sort of Hermetic and Western esoteric traditions, which inherits like Kabbalah, right? And you inherit tarot and sort of, Western astrology, right? Like, so those kind of come in baked into the cake, but it doesn't presuppose like belief necessarily, like bhakti type activity in any of those areas, right? It's just kind of those are the default signifiers that you kind of get. And I think like if you wanted to connect that to like, your Celtic heritage and make that like a part of the practice, like I think you would probably get a lot of mileage once you kind of learn some basics and once you find yourself fluent in the sort of fundamental underlying grammar of like Western ceremonial magic, then you can start to like flavor it and play around with it and experiment to taste, right? Because I think what you might find also, again, like I'm just relying on some of my experiences and from things that I've heard from other people, is if you instead go straight to like, I don't know, finding the druids around you. And I'm sure some of them are lovely and whatever, but you might find people who are like more interested in like Irish cooking and environmentalism, as like and kind of a general like pantheistic like nature chillin' thing, right? Which again, I'm not knocking that, but if you are primarily trying to develop yourself as a ceremonial magician, you're not gonna get a lot out of that group. In the same way that like there are a lot of guys who are doing like Northern European paganism, and for them, they want to hang out, drink beer, and do MMA fights and be racist, which is like cool, good for them. But like if I'm trying to develop as an esotericist or whatever, like I'm not getting a ton of mileage from investing time into those relationships, right? And into any organizations or whatever, right? So I think that maybe like just do the thing that maximizes like your mileage, right? And then I don't know, like I don't know what your priorities are and stuff like that, but it's like just because ceremonial magic, quote unquote, is like passe or whatever, or like, people are, it's like we don't do that anymore. Like there are tons of people doing that, right? Like the organization that like Dion Fortune founded, it still exists. Like, I don't think you can totally join if you're not in the UK, but like, you know, there are organizations all over that are like that are still doing that kind of work that I think would educate you, and more directly and fully address your desires, I guess.
That was really great, Solar. Thank you so much for saying all of that. 100% agree. Like, if you're going to be a ceremony magician, then that's what you should go for. 100%. Like, you go for the thing that you want. Like, there's no point to, yeah, like, maximize your time. You are the time king, or at least he lives in your mind. So, if he's the master of you, that's a problem. But if you kind of like have more of a chronopoetic relationship with him, kind of like to draw in what Joshua said, like weave through time, that's more interesting. That's more magical. So I 100%, that Solar, very well said. So I agree that it's the Aeon for magic maxing. That's it. Like, I don't know, if you're not doing it, you're not going to make it. That's it. It's like a psychic Aeon. It's like Age of Aquarius, but it's like not retarded and like forced. I mean, we already lived through it, so whether it was forced on us or not, it's here. So that's it. And it's like what we make of it, and like that's a great lesson for like myself personally, and like us all. Like, yeah, the timeline's what we make of it, as well as like this life. And I think we don't have to like rely on the preconceptions of like those who came before. We joked about this. Like, I joked with Solar about like being old troons, because Rom teases us about being like old fogies in magic, and yeah, we kind of are. But you know what? The reality is, and Matt obviously also calls us old troons secretly, probably. But no, I think that no. Okay, well, thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. I just think that the reality is like there's so much metaphysical material in the world, so much, like there's so much crap, there's so much, like most of it is just total bullshit. It's just like, it's so bad, and it's like, what do even I know? I don't even know that much, but I can tell you that it is possible that Kabbalah is a great tool, that like, yeah, there are things beyond our like comprehension in the world. Not everything's supernatural. Some things are of our mind. Most things are of our mind. And like, you should go and explore it. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can explore it within traditional religion too. It's totally fine. I think we should just like look for the esoteric where it is. Sometimes the seeds are right in front of us. Sometimes it's in the Orthodox text, in however way that manifests. So, Joshua, please go ahead.
Thank you. So as we've been talking about, like which systems would work and for what reasons, like because it has a strong like foundational value. Well, I've seen in some type of like chaos magician, like the Psychonaut chaos magician manual, which I think is pretty interesting. They have a map of, it's the flaming sword method of creating a servitor or egregore. And when you really think about it, that's no different than the Sephiroth tree, and how each religion has its own kind of path from the bottom to top in some cases. So I think you can kind of map religions, as it were, on that tree in general, and kind of get some revelation as to what the paths are, or how they're analogous, or so on and so forth, like whether it be a parable or a direct teaching or a law, etc. And so I think whenever you're using what you're already familiar with, it's kind of like relying on a recipe that's pre-existing when you're trying to make a dish or whatever, or you could try to make it on your own. But there's more foundation in trial and error and so on and so forth with something that's already pre-existing. And of course, that doesn't mean that it's the only way necessarily in terms of practice or methodology, but it's some way that's been explored or established. And so I think in that sense, it's kind of seen as like fuel or a power source somewhat. So like when the Catholic Church, for instance, has such large numbers and they're all doing like similar ritual, well, that gives somebody access to whatever's outside of that, right? So I kind of see that as like, well, they got a pretty good fuel source going for them. They got the numbers, but then a lot of them aren't practicing in a deeper sort of way. And, you know, so I think in some ways it's like, that's why I think it's nice to operate outside of that sometimes, because it puts you outside the possible skandhas or whatever. I don't know. I like that word, but that could exist, like if the clergy were not directing the egregore properly. And so I think it kind of ties into the shepherding of humanity in a strange way, like what the function of these egregores are, because they maybe they're not allowed to interfere directly. You know, like even in the Vedas, you know, Arjuna and what is it, Krishna doesn't kill all those people necessarily. He lets Arjuna do it, right? So it's like they have to act through a vessel or something sometimes too. So I don't know. I just wanted to share that thought about egregores and how they relate to religion.
Well, I think that that's an interesting sort of idea to close on, is like, who are the priests? Something even Solar said. And it won't be months, Solar. I'm not that behind. I'm like a week behind. I've been doing weekly and sometimes even twice weekly releases. I've been quite on top of it, but I am a week behind. Sorry, Drizzle. Shout out Drizzle. So his episode, well, I will get it done. Yeah, Solar's episode will come out next month in May. Be really great. In the 50s with Ashley and Chris and a bunch of other people. So really, it'll be strong. But who are the priests? Who are the Brahmins? Well, what if you kind of took that idea of the Shudras, the builders, right? I mean, yeah, I know Ram, I know they're low consciousness, but we are low consciousness, and so what must we have done to rise through sort of the ashes of like the neoliberal, the sort of like the crisis of capitalism, like all of this shit that we're seeing? Like, I'm pro Taros, like I think it's great. I think like cleansing fire, but like, you know what? I don't even know. I really don't know. Is it all a game? Is it all a lie? I don't know. It's kind of fun though. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of like weird to see people melt down about things that are completely antithetical to their supposed ideology. I think it's great that people are redefining what nationhood is, what like peoplehood is, like maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't, maybe it's all bullshit, maybe we already know, maybe that's the primordial truth, is like, we're just all fucking human, we're all just like making mistakes in the world and just trying to figure it the fuck out. Maybe that's it. But I do think there is something to like the idea of the Shudras coming up. It's hard out there for Naga. So, you know, like, you come up, you build. So who are the Brahmins of the new age? Well, I would say it's the builders. Like, who are the builders? Like, is it the architects of our cyber reality? Yeah, maybe. Or is it us? I think it's us. So I think we are the heroes. That's what I really think. That's what I love about like Monty and like Dingbat's side of Twitter. It's like kind of cool. It's kind of literary. I know Solar follows all of the cool literary people too, but you know, well, at least the ones he thinks are good. But you know, they're telling stories. They're telling our stories. Like, that's what it's all about. Like, you know, like, we are the archivists, and you have to make it, and you have to build it, and it's like, it's also in yourself. It's the rectification that happens in yourself. That's even was my first like real experience, was like realizing that the rectification was about yourself. That's why I always emphasize it, because it was like one of the more profound things that I sort of came across. And it's something that's often repeated in Dharma. Like, it's all about, it's like, you know, it's all about bodhicitta, and it's all about emptiness. Like, you have to let that shit go. Like, I'm really bad at that. But I have a lot of love, I think. And so I think that at least in one element I have the capacity to like extend that. So, we forge, we work, we perform the great work. The great work is, as I always say, ourselves, and reality is what we make of it. Babylon is, who does she want to be? Who is she in this Leela? What form does the light take? Does she take the form of the mother? Does she take the form of the 64? Interesting. So we'll leave it there. Thank you to my co-hosts. I'm going to let them, if they individually each want to plug. So we have Matt, Solar, and Joshua, the branch. We also have Avi, Thaddeus, Shakti, Ram, and Mookie. So we really ended on like a ultra, we'll call it a plus ultra lodge moment. So thank you all. We love you all. And the spaces wouldn't happen without you. You're obviously co-creators in the reality that we exist in, which is like a Ketu smoky space. So I'm going to throw it over to Matt. Matt, please go ahead.
I'll first ask if you guys want to do a quick practice. I had this intuition to do it. If you guys want to do it really quickly.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so it is related to the 18th arcana, which in my system is the moon. So the moon talks about the hidden enemies, right? And illusions and so on. But it's also related to Aquarius, so the age we are upon. And so basically, we should, the recommendation from this arcana in a personal level is that whenever we feel like we have our backs unprotected, or it's like there are some hidden shenanigans happening against us, which, by the way, usually is ourselves, like we are self-sabotaging a lot of times, but anyways, anything that is trying to bring us down, we can recite a great invocation. It's like let's call it Lord's Prayer of the New Era. So if you take a deep breath, I'm going to do it, and then there's a small gesture we do it at the end. So breathe in. From the point of light in the mind of God, let light flow into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love in the heart of the one, let love flow into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth from the center where the will of the one is known. Let purpose guide the little wills of men. Let purpose which the masters know and serve from the center which we call the human race. Let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. May light, love, and power restore the plan on earth. Now, if you know where east is, try to face it. Now you can imagine that, or you can do it with your body. Do a salute, like a military salute, and say, I become vigilant. So every time, again, you feel like your back is unprotected, you can do this prayer, or just do the quickly salutation to east and say, I become vigilant. So hope you guys liked it. That was me. I'm Matt. I like Kabbalah. I like Tarot. I like doing tech stuff with spiritual stuff. So I'm trying to bring more apps into existence. I'm trying to bring open source code as well, so people do this kind of stuff, because I personally don't have time to implement everything that I want to implement. So if more people want to do it, please do it. I'm sharing it all. I don't care. I'm not trying to become a guru or something. So yeah, hope you guys like this spaces of today.
I mean, amazing, Matt. So obviously we love it. It was awesome. It was a great work. So in the literal and metaphorical sense, or metaphysical sense. So thank you. Obviously we are like we are kind of like we're ragtag, but we're a very interesting bunch of people. A very interesting group, like diverse, but strangely in sync at times. So I just thank you so much, Matt, and obviously Solar, and obviously Joshua again. Like it's been, I have to say that the spaces have been better. It's easier for me because I can riff. right? I can riff off things that you guys say. It's a lot of pressure off me to have you guys as my co-hosts, and I appreciate that. If any girls ever want to come up, you are always welcome as well. So just want to say that. It doesn't have to be like the boys hour, but it is kind of cool, I have to say. I mean, I kind of like it. I'm like, yeah, it's like the Kabbalah bros. Because those, like, that cool dissident side of Twitter, they do listen to this. At least a couple of them do. I know for a fact. I can't say who it is, but I know for a fact. So I'm just saying that there is something kind of like dudes rock about it, which I'm I'm down for. But I also think like it's totally fine if we had another speaker or whatever. So I'm just extending the invitation to people from the lodge, and it's an option, so you can consider it or not. Totally fine. Or any haram you ever want to come up, please come up, no problem. You're always welcome. It's not like the IQ measuring contest. It is really just about seeing the connections, like he uses Joshua's metaphor. It's about like the web of connections that we weave through our words. So I don't take it as a spider mother, but that's, like some people do. That's totally fine. I just take it more as like we're tying conceptual threads together. We're bringing the lightning, because what looks like a spider web is, lightning in a spider web glistening in dew. Think of it, catching the first light, the first rays of the rising sun coming from the east. It's prismatic. It's kind of invisible, but it's also kind of real. I don't know. I think that's kind of interesting. So, anyways, you won't have to go out on my like Yesodic Kabbalah thoughts tonight. Solar, do you want to say anything in closing?
Nope. Just thanks you guys all for being here. It's really nice. I really look forward to these spaces. So thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you. I also look forward to our spaces, actually, and I think we've been on like one of the best. I know we didn't even talk about the fucking book, which I have open at page 36. Anyways,
I mean, in a way,
but
we did.
honestly,
In a way, we did, just not by the book.
I agree. I totally agree with you, Matt. I think that all the spaces have a metaphysical quality. And I think that they're very purifying. And like though I'm talking about the restarted spaces, I really have felt it. I felt like invigorated. I felt like, yeah, I'm going to talk to people who all know different things, who are going to bring and extend and expand, very Hasidic in a way, my Kabbalah knowledge. For real. So, and not just that, but just all the things that we talk about. Like I learned so much from Solar. I learned tons from Matt. I learned tons from Joshua. Like things I would never even think of in my fucking life. I'm able. It's not even that I take directly. It's more that I put the connection together, and I'm like, oh fuck, that's what that means. And it's like click, click, click. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but that's how I feel. It's very dynamic. Really appreciate it. Joshua, do you have any closing words for anyone? And thank you so much, Solar, for giving a shout out. Appreciate it. Joshua.
Sure. I thought what Matt was with the visualization, the Ein, and it was a bit of wordplay, as he said. I was thinking of the center of the wheel and will. I thought sounded very similar. I thought, oh man, yeah. And I just wanted to say I hope everybody has a terrific weekend. And maybe there's some astrology at play there to kind of emphasize commerce and boundaries. That to me is very Saturnian, Mercurial. Maybe what path on the tree that might be. But anyway, thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much, Joshua. I appreciate it. You are amazing guest of obviously Threshold Saints, as well as I would say my friend, and as well as like a lodge member. And so thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I would say the same for all of you. So thank you. And I have to say, I don't know. It was something. Everything Joshua says, I'm like, I kind of think about later. It's like a Solar. I like think about it later, and I'm like, oh, that's profound. That's profound. That's profound. Obviously, with Matt, we just have like that dynamic relationship where I just tell you right to your face, Matt. So I don't really think about it after. I mean, I think about it after in the sense that like I'm like, yeah, that's right. But I already know it when you like not already know it. I agree with you pretty much most of the time. So uh it's just it's less conceptual for me. I'm like, yeah, okay, got it. Yes. Anyway, thank you guys so much. This is the Grey Lodge, Jin the Ninja, Saturday Night Gnostic Mass, Axial Age Gnostics. Thank you, Nagas. You can follow me, or you can follow anyone from the Grey Lodge. Highly recommend it. Avi, Thaddeus, Shakti, Ram, Mookie, obviously my co-host, Matt Mora, Solar Exile, Dr. William Birkin, Joshua the Branch. So I don't really preference a spider over a crow despite recent postings. I just did that more as a joke. I actually think both are very useful conceptual tools and interesting symbols. So know your semantics, know your syntax, know your grammar. And that means in a metaphysical way, because that's often what that really means. So have a good night. Thank you so much. And peace out, my Nagas.